special City Council meeting of May 11th, 2010. Let's all do the Pledge of Allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this is a study session. We are looking at the two proposals that have been given to the City of San Carlos from the Redwood City Police Department and the Sheriff's Office. Before we get started, I will have our City Manager, Mark Weiss, make some intro comments for us, and then we'll get going. Thank you. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the City Council, as you know, subsequent to the failure of Measure U last November, City Council authorized staff to pursue and investigate regional public safety models. And in doing that, the city staff met with neighboring cities and with the county with respect to police, which is what we're here to discuss this evening, to solicit interest in alternative business models that we might consider that would be more efficient and more effective in the delivery of public safety in San Carlos. Tonight we have, we're happy to represent to you that we have received two proposals. Those are contained within your packet, and we've extended the opportunity this evening for the City of Redwood City and the County Sheriff to explain their proposals, present those to the City Council, answer any questions that the City Council might have at this juncture. Now I should mention that this is a work in progress. These proposals are under review by city staff. We are in the process of meeting and conferring with those labor groups that will meet with us, and we're trying to meet with everyone. We've extended offers to everyone to ensure that there's an opportunity to answer all questions, consider all implications in terms of the service delivery model, as well as the labor impacts, the employee impacts of the proposals that are being submitted. But those are being refined and will be, continue to be reviewed and refined as we move forward from this evening. But this evening is part of the process in terms of giving you an opportunity to meet the representatives that are putting the proposals on the table and answer or ask any questions that you might have at this juncture. Our intent then is to continue that review. We are working to retain consulting assistants to work with staff and to work with the proponents here, the City of Redwood City and the County Sheriff, to refine and better understand those proposals so that we can report back to you at a later time with respect to the strengths and weaknesses of the current city model, as well as the proposal from Redwood City and the proposal from the county. So we will come back to you at a later juncture with a more detailed report as these proposals are fully fleshed out, refined, understood, reporting the strengths and weaknesses, and at that juncture at a later time we'll ask you to give us further direction with respect to which vendor or whether or not we should continue to work with our own police department as we have in the past. The process tonight, first up, we've invited the City of Redwood City to make a presentation. I understand from talking with each of them that the presentations will be in the neighborhood of a half an hour, maybe plus or minus. The thought is that you'd have the opportunity to ask questions of each after they make their presentation, take a short break after Redwood City's let the county set up their presentation, go through the same process with the county. Subsequent to that, we would hear from the community and then public comment at the end of the meeting. So that's the process as we envision it. If you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to address those. Otherwise, I believe Mayor Ira from the City of Redwood City is going to kick off the presentation.
Through the chair, I have a question, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Weiss, you mentioned that you were attempting to meet with all the employee groups
yes.
Who will be affected by a possible outsourcing or contracting out. Have any employee groups not met with you at this time?
We have not met with the Police Officers Association at this time. We've made numerous overtures in the hope that we can begin that process. We're still awaiting to find a time that is acceptable to the POA to begin those discussions.
Okay, that's the only question I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, welcome, Mayor Ira, to San Carlos. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much for you and your team coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'd just like to start by saying once again how encouraged I am at your leadership and actually looking at this. There's no question in my mind that this is the wave of the future, that we're all in a very similar situation and we need to be looking at this. And for you to be the first, I really do commend you for your encourage to even look at it. We all want to have our own domain and protect our own domain, and that's what's really kept us from doing a lot of these things many years ago. And the time has really come. Unfortunately, it's the crisis that's brought us here, but I do really want to thank you so much for your leadership in this area. We've always really felt close to San Carlos. We've been, doing things together for years. We've always had a bond at the different meetings. I was thinking, I remember doing a slide presentation with Mike King years ago for a chamber leadership, and I remember looking over to him and saying, our slides are interchangeable. Our revenue sources are just like your revenue sources, and our expenditures are basically the same percentages as your percentages, and we easily could have flipped slides. He could have done mine, I could have done his. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to work together, and that's why we're here. I think it's, as I mentioned, the wave of the future. So what is Redwood City going to bring? Well, we're going to bring the same thing that you have right now. Our major goal and priority in our city is to provide public safety, just like yours. And we're doing that community policing now, and I think that we can work with you well to provide that same type of community policing that you need in your community. And I think that's what we're going to bring to the table. What we're going to promise you is that we will work within our budget constraints, because we're all going to be cutting. We're all going to be laying people off. We're going to have to be laying off police officers. So what am I going to bring to you? I'm going to make the commitment to you that we are going to go through our police department and make sure that it runs effectively and efficiently so that we can provide the best quality service at the very lowest price, and so that we're going to be able to continue that as we go on in the future. And we're going to make that commitment to you. And quite honestly, if I can't make that commitment to you, then I will be in your seats a very few years from now asking another city to provide services for me, because we want to go with those that are willing to change, that are willing to be innovative, and that are willing to be progressive and to provide the best possible service to our citizens at the very lowest price. So thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And I'm turning it over to staff now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council of San Carlos. I am Bob Bell. I'm the HR director with the city, and I'm really here on behalf of the city manager tonight. He was on a pre-planned vacation, and so he couldn't attend this meeting, regrettably. But I did help him develop the proposal with the police department, so there was a few things that I wanted to cover, and then I'm going to turn it over to our police department, our police chief, and one of our captains to go through the services that they provide as well as the proposal itself. So very quickly, in terms of our presentation tonight, what we'll be doing is giving you a background and really the Redwood City commitment to service that we would be bringing to San Carlos if afforded the opportunity. And that will be covered by our police chief, Lou Covarrubias. After that, we'll get right into the proposal and give you kind of a 35,000-foot view of it, if you will, and cover the costs of the proposal that was submitted. There's been a few changes to it based on our meeting we had with some of your staff last week, and there'll probably be some additional changes as we continue to meet and go through this process. And then you're going to hear from our POA president, Mike Reynolds. We involved both our POA and our PSA in developing this proposal because we knew they were key stakeholders. And then we'll be available for Q&A at the end of the presentation. In terms of the objectives of the proposal, again, to give you a better understanding of what we submitted, clarify the staffing levels and costs included in the proposal, and really we want to demonstrate that we have a real commitment to providing exceptional services both in our city and to San Carlos if we do end up developing a partnership. And then again, just really to acknowledge that this is going to be an evolving process. We already, again, had some additional changes to the proposal after our meeting last week. There's some additional details we need to evaluate, and so you'll see another amendment coming to the proposal probably in the near future as this process evolves, and then we'll answer questions. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our police chief, who is going to cover the department and their commitment to providing safety services.
Thank you, Bob. Good evening, Mayor Royce, members of the City Council. Thank you for considering the Redwood City Police Department as a possible policing partner and for giving us the opportunity to present our proposal. Based on the Chief Rothus dashboard information, which I'm sure that you've seen, it's obvious that you have very good reason to be proud and pleased with the service that the San Carlos Police Department has provided this city. They've done a great job. And before I begin my presentation regarding the slides, I'd like to point out that if our departments were to merge, that your officers would be joining a department that's equally professional, proactive, and productive. As you can see here, we have some of the same specialized units that some of the agencies have, but I put them up first because we are very interested in prevention in our city. The implementation of the truancy program began before my tenure at Redwood City, but I've given a special emphasis because some years back I read a study that indicated that if young people are kept in school through grade school, that they increase their chances of graduating from high school 80%. And not only that, but when we implemented a program and put emphasis on it in San Jose, we reduced burglary 25% because so many of those young people are out stealing property, burglarizing, and also by emphasizing that, it prevents their involvement in gang activity because when they're on the street, as you know, they are more likely, excuse me, to be contacted by gang members. I put the mobile cat up here because one positive aspect of partnership would be the fact that we've implemented the RIMS program, Records Information Management, and at least 15 cities in San Mateo County have done the same. We're interconnecting with them so we can share information. And I'd like to mention that not all that long ago we had an attempted homicide in our city. By checking your RIMS program, we identified some suspects that had been stopped by a San Carlos police officer, and we subsequently were able to expedite the arrest of those suspects because of the information we were able to gain through the citation that had been issued in your city. So I'm pointing that out as a system that we already have integrated together and which we can improve if we were to partner up in the future. And then finally, that we emphasize traffic enforcement in our city because it's such a heavily traveled corridor, and we would do the same in your city if we became your partners. This first slide here, a 5-year history of all Part 1 crimes. Part 1 crimes are those crimes that the FBI has identified as the most serious crimes, excuse me. That's homicide, robbery, aggravated assault, rape, larceny, theft, burglary, vehicle theft, and arson, as I said before. And you can see that in the last 3 years, the Redwood City Police Department has worked very diligently to reduce all of these crimes. Next slide. As you can see here, this shows the history of homicides in Redwood City by calendar year. And here again, you can see that since 2005, 2006, in the last 3 years, again, we have managed to reduce those homicides to 1 a year. And our street crimes team, which has been very, very diligent in working the gang violence that had been occurring, has done a great job of their prevention work and also of impacting these crimes. Not to say that they couldn't rise in the future sometime, but the fact is that we've managed to keep them down, and it's our intention to keep working in this fashion. These are the property crimes, and here again you can see a drop in burglary, larceny, theft, and vehicle theft, and arson. And again, you can see a slight rise in 08, 09. I attributed that to the impact of the budget cuts. And not only that, but the focus that we've all had because of the budget, which is somewhat distracting. But again, once we get past this current budget adjustment, we intend to refocus again and continue to do everything we can. And I'm bringing my experience to bear, having worked in other environments, in order to continue to reducing these crimes. Juvenile diversion program, I point this out because we have a strong prevention attitude with regards to juvenile delinquency. And also, it's our intention to divert as many of the young people as we can. We're not interested in involving them in the system if we can avoid it, and as long as we're successful with our efforts. But here again, you can see through the number of diversions we have that we're taking each year. Across the board, you can see that juvenile delinquency has dropped, and that the number of first-time offenders is beginning to drop also. So we've had some successes also. Calls for service, while we've done this work, we've done it in the face of the fact that calls for service in Redwood City continue to increase. Some part of it is due to the downtown activity, but again, this is the crime prevention attitude and the enforcement and crime reduction attitude that we would bring to your city if we were partnered with your department. At this time, I'd like to mention that our departments work extremely well together already. Time and time again, we have had to call them to assist us in Redwood City, and on many occasions, as you've probably seen also by Chief Roth's report, San Carlos has had to call us as well. And I'd like to point out that during my 3.5 years as police chief in Redwood City, the police officers have repeatedly demonstrated that they're truly committed to the department's mission, which is providing excellent service with integrity and respect. They've demonstrated it through the crime-fighting activity that I've shown you, but they've also demonstrated it through their community policing efforts. Some of you might have seen a couple months ago the piece on Channel 2 in which one of our officers encountered a homeless person downtown. After he learned the individual's history and how he lost his home and lost his job and so forth, that officer took the time on his own to find him a job at a mobile home park and also to find him some housing at the park where he had him employed as a maintenance person. This is the same officer, by the way, who a year earlier arrested a gang member after a lengthy foot pursuit downtown after the gang member had stabbed a young person near our train station. I don't know if you noted that in the paper. But the point I'm trying to make is that the officers emphasize community policing, and of course that started long before I came here. And I don't want to give credit to the person who started that because he's going to be competing with us with this proposal here in a few minutes, Carlos Bolaños. But the bottom line is that they work both the community policing very well as their commitment, which is demonstrated regarding combating crime and violence. Both of our agencies are made up of hardworking professionals, and I believe that given the opportunity, they will both continue to provide excellent service to both of our communities. And I say continue because time and time again, I have examples here. I won't take the time to explain them to you. But working together, we've solved crimes. We've recovered property. Most recently, property on May 6th out of 2 burglaries that took place in San Carlos. There was an armed robbery at Carl's Jr. down in San Carlos. We responded to provide a Spanish-speaking translator and then stayed to handle a couple of calls while your officers are busy. So the partnership has been ongoing, and I think that we can make it even better. So therefore, I want to thank you for considering Redwood City as a possible partner, and I want you to know that as Chief of Police, I'm fully committed to making this partnership work and to fulfilling the requirements of the proposal, and we'll do everything I can to ensure that it's successful. Thank you very much.
Chief, thank you very, very much.
I'm sorry? Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank
Are there
you.
other speakers now coming from Redwood City? Yeah, great. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Ron Matuzak. I'm one of 3 police captains for Redwood City. I'm currently in the investigation division. It's my pleasure to discuss with you the staffing aspect of this proposal. I know that you've read it. I'll hit on some highlights that you may not have been aware of and answer any questions you might have. There are essentially two staffing options. They're actually identical. There's only one change. One provides for a police captain and secretarial support for the captain who would be assigned exclusively to San Carlos. We've had some discussions with your city manager regarding the identity of the police department. They would all be Redwood City police officer employees, but it would be easily accomplished to have these officers wear San Carlos uniforms and drive San Carlos police vehicles. The staffing levels is of great concern to you and to us as well. It's quite clear you want to maintain minimum staffing levels. It's my understanding you typically run 2 officers to 4 officers at any one time. And in order to accomplish that, our staffing suggestion is to have no fewer than 2. The maximum would be 6, depending on the day of the week and the time. One benefit to you would be that we would now be one large police department. So Redwood City, our minimum staffing is typically 8, and there are times we run up to 22 officers. So those officers would be available to you should a crisis arise, just as the officers in San Carlos would be available to Redwood City should a crisis arise. In order to reach that staffing level, we had to charge a pretty substantial amount of overtime. You have approximately 24 uniformed police officers working the streets right now for you. And we're proposing to do this with 16 officers plus 1 motor officer. So although we could hit your shift minimums, there's no way we could maintain those in times of sickness, injury, or training without adding a substantial overtime component. So you're seeing that reflected right here. Also, we did not drill down on the records. It says division. I'm sure it's a records unit. That's a ballpark guesstimate as to how much it would cost to absorb that. And you probably know you're currently in a contract with the Menlo Park Police Department to provide dispatching services. That contract runs through November of 2011. So that would be an opportunity for us to engage in conversation with you to take over that function when your contract with Menlo Park expired. This proposal does not include booking fees, jail access fees. I think actually there is no more booking fees. It's the jail access fees or laboratory fees. For Redwood City, those are somewhat substantial. They might be a bit lower for you, but depending on the exact cost, and we're in communication with your staff, that might have to be absorbed by the city of San Carlos. City of Redwood City would assume risk management and HR services for the city of San Carlos in relation to the police department. And that last bullet point must be from HR. Actuarial evaluation on workers' comp liability and general liability is recommended within the first year of the contract. This is a bad part. It has to do with the money. You see the initial proposal, cost option 1. I think that's somewhat unrealistic if we were going to fill those overtime shifts as you would wish us to do in order to maintain your shift minimums. So with 2,000 additional OT hours, which is roughly 200 shifts for our 10-hour days, you see the cost of that. And then option number 2 varies only due to the fact that that would include a police captain and a secretary. So if you'd like to ask me questions now, I'd be happy to field them, or I could introduce you to our POA president.
Why don't we go through the entire presentation and we'll get into
Okay.
questions and answers.
Next up is Officer Mike Reynolds.
Mike, welcome.
Thank you. All the important people said all the good stuff. So I'm just going to try to give you a little bit of perspective of the officers and our supervisors. I represent the Redwood City Police Officers Association, and tonight I'm actually speaking on behalf of the Redwood City Police Sergeants Association as well. So the officers that we have and sergeants that we employ at the Redwood City Police Department are a diverse group of men and women and who are motivated by the honor of serving our community through law enforcement. As you heard, our mission statement is providing excellent service with integrity and respect. And that mission statement was actually developed years ago by the police department, including and asking the officers and sergeants in part how they felt that their police services should be delivered to the community. And that's the mission statement that they came up with. That's the feeling that the officers wanted and the sergeants wanted to convey to the citizens each time they went out on a call. And that kind of stands as our goal as we go out on a shift each day, no matter what our job is. Officers and sergeants in Redwood City we're somewhat unique and forward-thinking in terms of police work and the services we provide. We have an interesting dynamic as a group, and the level of customer service we provide comes from a combination of the continual progressive training that we receive, the guidance and support of our immediate supervisors, and a genuine desire to hold criminals accountable for their actions. There's 14 sergeants at the Redwood City Police Department with an average of 19 years experience among them. The culture of each patrol team and specialized unit is that each officer is generally expected to do the best that they can to utilize their personal and professional resources to provide the best customer service on every call for service. There's a strong sense of teamwork within the organization. Officers and sergeants work together in sharing ideas, police concepts, life and job experiences to attain that goal of providing that excellent customer service with integrity and with respect for the community. The officers and sergeants of our police department are also a talented and multifaceted group. Due to a general philosophy that proactive police work yields the most effective results in the effort to prevent and reduce crime in the community, officers and sergeants are encouraged to employ creative thinking and thorough problem-solving methods in the performance of our duties. Our officers and sergeants are very well trained in a variety of law enforcement techniques and procedures, and many have held and do hold specialized positions. These specialized positions include things like detectives, traffic officers, canine handlers. We have a very effective street crime suppression team, a SWAT team, and a community coordinating activities team that works with members of the community to solve those systemic problems in the community that don't quite reach the level of a crime, but that negatively impact the quality of life. We have a special team especially for that. So, as a general example, every Redwood City officer on patrol should be able to pull from and utilize their training and experience on every call to find the best solution to permanently solve a problem as they experience it, not just take the least path of resistance, throw a Band-Aid on it, and hope it doesn't arise again. We actually put the thought, the experience, the investigative skill, and all of our resource into each call to try and permanently solve a problem. We think that's the basis of what we do. We think that's important, and we found that over the years, long term, that seems to work the best. This kind of attitude has created a strong work ethic within our community, our officer sergeant group, and each patrol team strives to use the technical and human resources within that team to fight crime and secure the public safety by drawing on their experiences that they may have, whether it be experience as a detective, a traffic officer, or a community policing officer that they can now employ on patrol. Other agencies, when someone's on patrol, that's their only mission, is to stop a problem and get on with it. If they need a detective, they call a detective. Our officers are multifaceted in that they're able to do a variety of jobs under the umbrella of patrol and provide more efficient service in that way. So this comprehensive method of delivering police services works so well, as you heard from the chief, that the working relationship between San Carlos and Redwood City is really nothing new. It's been going on for years. Due to the fact that our cities are immediate neighbors with no third party in between, we've been able and eager to assist and work with the San Carlos Police Department on numerous occasions. And many of those have resulted in the apprehension of and conviction of criminals that are working in San Carlos. There may be other law enforcement agencies in the area, but it seems like Redwood City gets called quite a bit, and we're glad to be there to help. But I think it's because we've shown over time to the rank and file patrol officers and the supervisors of the San Carlos Police Department that we will respond quickly, professionally, and with reliability. Over the years, we've assisted San Carlos with all types of incidents, from traffic stops that roll into our city to a homicide. Chief talked about some of the other recent activities that occurred. One that I don't think he did mention was a commercial burglary that occurred within the last month in San Carlos. They had a suspect and needed some emergency backup. Within minutes, 9 Redwood City officers, including 2 K-9 units, responded. They assisted with the establishment of a perimeter and a search, and the suspect was apprehended by a Redwood City K-9 unit. I have to say, it goes without mentioning that it goes both ways. The San Carlos patrol teams have been just as thoughtful and professional and reliable when it comes to helping Redwood City units. It's been more than evident that they've been able to provide immediate assistance to Redwood City officers due to their professionalism and motivation, but the most obvious, of course, due to their immediate proximity. It was one case, there was an impressive effort by the San Carlos patrol team who spotted 4 Redwood City carjacking suspects in a vehicle that they had just stolen after severely beating and robbing a victim in Redwood City. Due to their dedication to the community, community service, and a quick response, which of course was facilitated by, again, the close proximity of our jurisdictional boundaries, the 4 carjacking suspects were arrested and eventually convicted. I think it's important here that you understand that the working relationship between San Carlos and Redwood City patrol teams is strong and effective because all police officers understand that criminals that prey on the good citizens of any given community could just as well be entering and leaving either city to commit crimes. Criminals don't care where jurisdictional boundaries are. They're not going to stop at a line drawn across El Camino Real because it says San Carlos, or because you guys have a wing stop and we don't. That's an issue with me. There are some San Carlos officers who are already on the Redwood City SWAT team, so they're incorporated into that aspect of patrol and public safety. The San Carlos Redwood City Police Departments working together is really nothing new. That's about it for that. Let's see. So clearly, Redwood City is able to draw on its resources and a larger number of officers in an emergency situation and be in San Carlos in a matter of minutes, very quickly, due to the fact that our cities border each other. 3 of our 8 beats, or areas of responsibility, border the city of San Carlos. In the event that that number of officers in an emergency situation, like the one that was just highlighted, just isn't enough, the response team of Redwood City backup units comes from within the immediate area, not from other assorted jurisdictional pockets scattered throughout the county. I'm sure that as council members, you view public safety of San Carlos residents as paramount. And an integral part of securing the public safety is dependent on the immediate availability and rapid response by police in an emergency. And I think compromising that would be something that you regret. In closing, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak today, to represent some of the insight to the men and women of the Redwood City Police Department and the Police Sergeants Association. We know that the citizens of San Carlos, the officers of the Redwood City, the San Carlos Police Department, and you as in the council are in an unenviable situation. We wish everyone involved the best of luck during these challenging times. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Well, one last thing I wanted to mention, and then we're here to obviously answer questions for you, is in the proposal there is a timeline. And that timeline assumes a lot of different events would fall right into place. But really what we were trying to communicate with that are some of the key milestones that we would need to go through if the contract happens to be awarded to Redwood City. And obviously as we continue to meet, other things will come up. I worked for the city of Burlingame previously, and when they merged fire departments with Hillsborough, it was quite the process to go through. So we know it's quite an undertaking, and obviously we're committed to going through that process. The last thing I also wanted to, through the city manager, present to the council is we have a letter from Bonnie Hanson, the principal at Sequoia Union High School District, endorsing the Redwood City Police Department and talking about the positive experience she's had with the department in the city. So I will give that to your city manager along with an org chart of the current police department for your reference later. And with that, we'll open it up to questions for the council.
Great. Thank you very much. So what I'd like to do is turn it over and have council ask questions of your staff. Maybe what I'd like to do is start on one side here and maybe ask council. I want to make sure we take plenty of time here. There may be multiple questions. Maybe if each of us could ask 2 or 3, and then maybe move on to the next person, move down the row, and then we'll kind of get back to you to continue just to kind of give you a little bit of a break and a fresh start here and move on. So with that, who would like to start? Mr. Klein?
All right.
Please.
Man on a totem pole. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mayor Ira, for coming before us and talking tonight, and thank you to your staff, your chief, and your other staff members. I know this is going to be hard for San Carlos, but it's good to know that our neighbors are willing to help out and willing to come and present proposals to us. So I have a lot of questions, so I'll do a couple first. The first is with on-duty personnel. I'm looking at the chart where it shows the majority of the time we have 3 on-duty personnel, and then it fluctuates 5 and 6 depending on the hour of the day. In regards to guaranteeing those on-duty personnel will be here at all times, what happens, say you have, at some point you have 17 minimum staffing of it, guaranteed. Say you only have 16 people available that day. What happens? Does San Carlos drop to 2 or does Redwood City drop to 13?
No, minimum means minimum. When that happens, we fill with overtime or find another way to fill that hole. So minimum is the absolute lowest acceptable number.
Okay, so we would just fill that with overtime, and that's why you showed that initial
Yeah,
bump.
we would find some mechanism, not necessarily overtime. There's people in other specialized units, but that's a resort that we would avail ourselves of.
Okay. Another question in regards to the way this is going to feel. If we were to go with Redwood City, would you be using our police department, or would our police be coming out of the Redwood City department?
I think that remains to be determined.
Okay. And well, I just wanted to do 2, so I guess.
No, two or 3. They're so
Okay.
short. You could do 3 or 4. Go ahead. I just want to make sure we have a chance to
Okay.
rotate early.
So then this might also be determined. I'll pass for now because my third question had to do with an offshoot of the second question. So since we don't know that.
Mr. Mott.
So one request I have, there was a discussion point that 3 of Redwood City beats border our city. At some point in time, for future reference, if you could provide us with a map of those beats so that we would know where they are, that would be tremendous. I was curious, just in terms of the status of your Police Officers Association agreement with Redwood City. Has it just been signed? Is it new? Is it continuing? It is a 1-year deal, 2-year deal. Could you give me some idea of what the current state is?
The POA MOU has 2 years to run, Mike? Or
2012.
2012? I think it's July. Okay,
Great. And
2012,
perfect.
September.
Perfect. And this may actually be a question for Mr. Maltby or anybody else. When there was discussion of jail access fees or lab fees, do we have my assumption is regardless of whether we stay or if we go with a partner for our policing services, those fees will probably stay the same.
No, county would waive that for you.
The county would waive.
Yeah, you'd be under the county umbrella, so in their proposal, unless they've changed their mind recently, they would waive those.
Understood.
But was your question more to the fact that if we were to go with Redwood City, our
It
fees would be
should be
exactly
about
the
the same.
same as if we stayed in San Carlos,
Exactly.
correct? Okay.
Well,
Right.
they would stay the same unless the sheriff begins to raise the fee depending on the sheriff's costs and so forth. So there might be some increase, but they'd be generally the same.
But it would be across everybody.
Same is true with the lab fees. They recently advised us they're going to raise the lab fees 3% because of the cost of living factor. So they wouldn't necessarily stay the same, but they would raise them depending on their expenses.
Great. I will pass at this moment.
Mr. Caselli?
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Again, as been said, Mayor Ira, please convey back to your council the thanks of this body again, stepping up, and as you indicated, we might be courageous. You're also very courageous to come up and to try to merge this situation with us, and we all are in the same boat. So a couple of quick questions, and I'm not sure whether it be the chief or Captain Matusak. You indicated there'd be 16 officers and 1 motor officer is the proposal, and we have approximately 24 officers now. I would assume that would mean that approximately 8 officers and possibly command staff would then not move over. Is that an assumption? Or would possibly command staff drop down and then there'd be maybe instead of 8 officers, perhaps 10 officers drop off?
Yes, that's correct. The people that we would bring from San Carlos to Redwood City would not enter Redwood City PD above the rank of police officer. And we would only hire the number of officers that we need to fulfill this agreement.
Okay, so in effect, our 2 commanders and our police chief would be eliminated from this proposal then?
Under option either 1 or 2, it escapes me now, one option calls for you to have a police captain and a secretary. Okay. So that would be a bit different than the other option.
I understand. What about support staff? We have police service technicians and community service officers and so on. Would those also be eliminated under this proposal?
No, under the proposal, I believe it calls for 3 community service officers and some part-time people as well.
Okay, so there'd probably be some, again, attrition, should we say, or whatever, however word you want to use. You probably wouldn't be taking all our support staff with over to the proposal.
Yeah, that's very difficult to say because we're in the same budget crunch you are in,
Sure.
and presently we have some CSOs that are in danger of layoff, so it's difficult to answer.
Okay. I just had one more on the same sort of area here, and I know this is very difficult, and I know it hasn't probably been fleshed out, but the seniority situation is obviously that's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be difficult or not difficult. Do you have any just off the cuff idea of how that might work?
I think I think I can say with confidence that the existing POA in Redwood City would prefer that everyone who joins the department joins at a level lower than currently existing officers. I mean, you're at a Morton's Fork here. I recognize what a difficult position you're in.
Okay, so basically, no matter if they had 20 years with San Carlos, they'd basically be the newest kid on the block if they went to Redwood City.
That's correct.
Okay. I have a couple others, but I'll yield.
Sure. Mr. Kovacs?
I think Mr. Grisilli's questions probably answered what I'm looking at, but you know, I'm trying to look at this thing from 30,000 feet, if you will, and I'm looking at it in terms of years ago when, many years ago, when Belmont and San Carlos combined fire departments and called it South County Fire. I'm going back that far. The idea was you know, they eliminated some stations, but the real savings was 1 chief instead of 2 and so forth. It was the management part of it. So what I'm looking at here is, in your opinion, what you're proposing in terms of patrol officers versus what we have currently, your proposal of our current investigation staff versus what you're proposing, and then what we have in terms of current oversight of the department versus what you're proposing. And in those areas, where is it that we're saving the money? I think I heard from what you answered Mr. Grisilli is we lose 2 commanders and we lose a chief, although this idea of a captain and a secretary is kind of like a chief.
Exactly. And that's where I hate to use the word fat, but whenever you merge, you're right. That's exactly where the excess is. It's in command staff. Right now we have 2 police chiefs and until recently 5 captains between the 2 of us. So you don't need that to run a police department the size of Redwood City and San Carlos combined. You're saving the money on command staff. You're also saving the money because you're having less police officers, less sworn. You mentioned that we'd be cutting, however many, 8 officers. And we're making that up with overtime, but remember there's no benefits associated with that. So there's some cost savings there as well.
I'd like to say that we would be guaranteeing you that your the officers who work here would be properly supervised through our own sergeants in some cases. And also Proposal 1 eliminates your command staff, your chief's position, one of our captains would take that role in your city. The other proposal would create.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to follow that a little bit, if you would.
Yes, go ahead.
So the option 2 gives us a full-time captain that would act as a chief.
Exclusively to San Carlos.
Exclusively to San Carlos. But
Okay.
I'm sorry, Chief, to interrupt you, but to go back, would you explain that a little bit further about the captain that would be?
Well, if you chose not
option
to
1.
add the position of a captain or an acting chief, as you indicated, and a secretary, then there would be additional cost savings because one of our current captains would take responsibility for managing the resources in San Carlos.
And explain a little bit further then how, currently we have usually about 3 officers. We're supposed to have 3 officers plus a sergeant, right, on duty. And the role of the sergeant is, to act as a supervisor, right? I mean, that's my understanding of police work, which is pretty thin.
Yes.
But can you explain to me then if we were to go with your proposal, we're going to have 3 patrol officers most of the time. And I also take it, this is sort of a side question, it looks like there's some overlap sometimes in these hours.
Yeah, certainly in a 4-10 schedule, you have a considerable amount of overlap because you're working 10-hour shifts.
Okay.
So 3 10-hour shifts, 30 hours, 24-hour day.
Okay. So who's supervising the patrol officers in our city under your proposal?
Well, our proposal calls for 2 additional supervisors. Currently, I believe you have 5, so that's 2 out of 5. We typically have 2 and sometimes 3 or 4 sergeants on duty in Redwood City. Again, we're just looking at Redwood City and San Carlos as one large police department. So those 2 or 3 sergeants, everyone's working a little harder. They might have 2 or 3 more officers to supervise on their shift than they did prior to this agreement taking place.
Okay, thank you.
So, Chief, you mentioned, which I think is mostly good news, additional activity on the downtown. We have that, I think, very similar to our Laurel Street, the restaurants and the bars and so forth. And I think it's great. Of course, I go home about 10 o'clock, but I do hear that as the evening goes on, there is more activity that demands the police services. And I know from the city of San Carlos, it's costing us more money. When you looked at the slide, the number of calls that have increased and so forth is from this action downtown, especially in the evening. Have you done any thinking about how to recover cost or how to either manage and do that, since it really has, I know, I'm assuming it's similar, it has really increased our activity and our costs to manage that activity?
Well, what we do, we try to manage some of it with the overlap of shifts. We have more of our people working at the time that the downtown is most active, so that's one way in which we address that issue. Another way is that we use our overtime funds for the purpose of bringing on more officers when we think that there's going to be an increased need. What Redwood City has done, they have, through the parking fund, funded 3 additional officers just to patrol on foot in the downtown area. And I'm not saying that you should have to do that, but I believe that by overlaps through overtime, which in many cases is cheaper than hiring additional personnel because you don't pay all the retirement and medical and so forth. But I think that it would be basically managed as well as you've done in the past, based on the schedule that we've identified. And I think that we might have to flex a little bit. And there are times when we pull somebody off a specialized unit to work that area. So I think flexibility and making sure you have sufficient resources down there based on your past history is the way that we could accomplish that goal.
Great,
Ron, did you have anything to add?
It's also fair to say it's a 2-year contract. I mean, this is kind of uncharted water, so 2 years from now, if there's a big explosion downtown, so to speak, we might be back here to talk to you.
And another question, you mentioned, I think it was Ron, that you talked about overtime. Our overtime used to be about $250,000 per year. We're spending $500,000 on overtime the past year or two. you mentioned an additional $180,000 of overtime, if I understood you, for San Carlos. So we're up around $700,000 on a budget of $7 million. My reaction is, one, cost. It's 10% of the overall budget. That's a lot. And secondly, my main concern is burnout. I mean, these officers, and it's usually not all the officers. It's usually, 20 or 30% of the ones that are doing all that overtime.
true.
So I was hoping that when you have a department of versus 30 in our department, you have 130, that we would be able to spread work and minimize overtime, not so much only cost, but also burnout. So what did I miss with overtime? Are we going to be working people that hard and spending $700,000 on overtime in San Carlos? Is that what I heard?
It is what you heard. It is a work in progress. We could minimize that by hiring more police officers. So remember, you have 24. We've hired 16. There's got to be a considerable difference there, and we're making up that difference in overtime. Rather than 16, we could propose 20, and far less overtime. But overtime is something that can wax and wane, and we can control. We'd prefer not to hire and dismiss police officers.
So your recommendation is that amount of overtime is the most cost efficient with our size?
That's our best guess as I stand before you this evening, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to add something to that. One of the things that I'm focusing on in Redwood City is increasing our reserve force, and we're at 10 reserves at this time. They're tremendously helpful. We hired our first level 1 reserve, which is a reserve officer that can work in a patrol car and not have to be accompanied and guided by a police officer. Now, that reserve will probably be using them for events, downtown, that sort of thing. But it's my intention to do something that we've done for years in San Jose, and that's create a pay job situation where the officers who choose to work and the reserves work for a set price, $69 as I recall, for officers per hour or somewhere in that area. It's much cheaper than the time and a half you pay for overtime, and I'm doing it. I'm moving that direction to avoid the burnout issue, because so far in Redwood City, people have been willing to work, and there may be instances where San Carlos officers may want to work overtime there, and some of our officers over here. But to avoid that issue in the long run, I think that we need to establish something that'll save all the cities, just as it does San Jose, tremendous sums of money by having a regular pay schedule.
Okay. Mr. Grocott, you start at this end, work the other way this time.
So I have 2 other questions I want to look at. The first one has to do with the type of policing that Redwood City does, and I don't know. So I'll ask it this way. We've never really talked about this as a council, but I think there is some understanding in this community of what we want of police officers. And the way I would put it from this council member is I want a police force that treats residents like residents and criminals like criminals, and the residents who want to be criminals get treated like criminals. So what that means, to flesh that out a little bit, is an officer pulls over someone who's going a little too fast on their way to work because they're late, maybe gives them a warning because they live in town and says, this is your town too, slow it down, let's be safe. Lets the guy go. But a criminal gets treated like a criminal ought to be treated. And it seems to me that's kind of the police force that we have right now. You see these guys downtown, they treat you right, you treat them right, you look them in the eye, and so forth. I see a lot of our officers, for instance, at the Plantation Coffee Shop where I go every morning, and these guys are coming in on their break or getting ready for their shift or whatever. They talk to me and I talk to them. They're friendly guys. And that's what I would expect out of our police officers. I don't know what to expect out of Redwood City. Maybe you could talk to that a little bit.
Well, I can tell you this, that we received many letters of compliment regarding the actions of our officers. I'm not saying that we would release someone who violated a traffic law perhaps as readily as you indicated, but the bottom line is that we considering the number of calls we handle, we have a very low number of complaints, and our city is so sensitive that we have to respond to everyone, even if it's obvious that they are perhaps not 100% mentally. So we respond to everyone, we investigate any complaint, and we do try to be as responsive as possible. But again, in our city, crime is a little, I think is a little heavier than it is here based on what I've seen, and I could be wrong, I suppose, but the bottom line is that our office is extremely community-oriented. I was shocked, to be honest with you, when I arrived here and heard that officers were changing light bulbs for senior citizens on their porches and sometimes inside their homes. And I was also surprised when a sergeant told me that an officer took a report because a citizen had tripped on the sidewalk and scratched the bezel on his Rolex. And I thought to myself, what kind of department is this? I mean, but nonetheless, that's what's been taught in Redwood City, and I'm certainly not going to interfere with that. We are very community-oriented, maybe not to the extent that you indicated, but pretty close, I would say.
And I would just one little add. I was telling Mayor Royce this. We went over to was it lunch today, chamber lunch. And I did get pulled over the other day by one of our officers for talking on my cell phone, and he gave me a ticket. So that was fine, you know. But so it's not always as easy as I indicated, but there is that feel sometimes. My second question is this, and I've said this to our city staff. I don't know if you could speak to this. Maybe this is for Mayor Ruskin or your city manager. Excuse me? Ira, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I get that confused sometimes, and I'm sure he understands. What I said to our staff was, if I don't like this idea of contracting out, I much prefer a shared governance model, a JPA. But I said also, if we need to go into a contract situation initially, try it out. You've indicated 2 years. That sounds like a good trial period to me. But I'm just wondering, is anybody thinking about something that would perhaps go that would go towards the shared governance model, a JPA of sorts, as opposed to just, you know, you bring us your bill of goods and we write a check to you and pay for it?
I don't know, maybe Bob, do you have the answer for that?
I really don't have an answer for that. I know that in the discussions with Peter Ingram, our city manager, we were looking at, for now, just kind of a contract for services model with the city of San Carlos. If we move towards a JPA model, obviously that would require further discussion with our council, with our POA and the employees in the department. I also know, just again through my experience in doing a JPA model in Hillsborough and Burlingame with their fire department, that was a really extensive process. So one thing we might want to take a look at is, if we move towards a 2-year contract model, then what are the steps and the measures we're going to want to look at to see if we want to move towards a formal JPA and involve the appropriate stakeholders at that time. So that would be one way to go about that process.
So do I hear in your answer that there's some, there's at least an acceptance of that idea, of exploring that idea during the 2-year period?
I think, man, it's nuts we don't have a Metropolitan Police Department. So I'm a strong supporter of a JPA. I will caveat that with certain cities, of which I would include you in one of those cities. So, but yeah, we would definitely explore that. I think that's what we should be doing, and I think that's what we should be doing for fire services as well. So definitely we would be looking at that.
Thank you.
Mr. Bell, I'm sorry. Could you? This is probably your question. I'm sorry. Apologize. Do you have any concept of assuming that the 16 officers and the 1 motor officer would move over, what the salaries and benefits comparison would be?
Yes. In terms of our salary and benefits in Redwood City, the salaries are higher, and our benefit levels, well, I believe you have a 2-tiered retirement plan. So we do not have a 2-tiered retirement plan. We have the 3% at 50 with single highest year. And so they would all be eligible for that per the current contract we have with our POA.
Is the salary, and I don't mean to tie you down, is it 5% higher, 10% higher? Or
you know what?
I apologize. I put you on the spot.
And, you know, I should have looked up those numbers before I got here tonight, and I didn't, but I know it's higher. And I have my file. I could take a look and tell you in just a few minutes. if
Okay,
you'd like.
thanks. I appreciate that. You know, the other question, and I guess maybe Chief, this might be for you or Captain Matusak, you know, sort of a little bit different spin on what Councilmember Grocott said. Your city is about, I think it's 75,000.
76,000.
76,000, we're 30. You have a very diverse community. There's no question about it. Our community isn't as diverse.
Right.
When you work in a certain environment, I mean, in a way, it's almost like working for a certain company, ABC company, and you get a certain environment that you're working in every single day. And then you get transferred over to company, DEF company, and they have another environment. It's a different situation. Do you anticipate any situations where your officers, or our officers, to be quite honest, might, you know, you've been working in a certain system for a number of years, you're veteran officers and so on, and you come into a situation and it's not 180 degrees different, but it's different because you're moving into a different area. Or you feel that, and again, maybe you said this already, I don't mean to have you repeat it, I apologize, that police work is police work, whether it's in San Jose or in Redwood City or in San Carlos. I don't know. I'm a little concerned that, you know, like I said, just working in a certain environment, in my own experience, working in certain companies and moving to other companies.
Well, I would say that our officers, I can't speak for the St. Carlos officers.
Understand.
I don't know them well, but I could say that our officers, because of the environment in which we work with, as you indicated, all different types of groups.
Sure.
So therefore, I don't see any problem with them working in your community at all.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we have a very high-priced home area here in Redwood City and out at the shores. We handle calls out there for the most part without complaint.
Mm-hmm.
And yet at the same time, we have to address the area of Middlefield Road where we have more recent arrivals and a lot. We have the parolees all along the El Camino and so forth. So I've really not seen a problem with the flexibility, the need for flexibility and adjustment on the part of the officers here.
Basic police work is basic police work for all intents.
Well, the police work is the same.
Right.
However, it's the relationship with the community, I think, that you're emphasizing more.
Right.
And I think that our officers could flex that. And your officers work with us quite often. They come in, we had a major disturbance downtown. They came in to assist us, and they had no problem doing what had to be done in terms of the enforcement aspect. So I think that because of the area in which they work here, there are many similarities in many of the areas in each of our cities.
Thank you very much, Chief. Mr. Bell? I'm sorry, did I catch you before you found it?
No, I found it. And I was just doing the calculation. Now, I have total comp figures, and this is as of February 3rd.
Not February 4th?
No, February 3rd. Okay. So that was the day I did this math. But anyway, and I know our department hasn't had any increases since then. But we're looking at, in terms of total comp figures, our city pays 20.3% more than San Carlos. A lot of that has to do with our PERS rates.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your PERS rates are, but I'm assuming with the two-tiered system, you probably have lower rates than we do. That's, again, an assumption on my part.
So just to put it in dollars, and again, I'm not saying this is the salary. I don't know what a salary of our police officer is.
Right.
But let's just take a number of 100,000 just to make it. Are you saying that if a police officer makes $100,000 in base pay here, he'll make $120,000 if he goes to work?
No, I'm saying that if the police officer's total compensation package was $100,000, that includes base pay, benefits, PERS, et cetera. Yes, it would be $120,000.
So the pay itself would be some percentage of that. And we're not sure what that number is.
That's what I'd have to drill down.
That's okay. I'm just trying to get a picture of the benefits and the total compensation. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mr. Mott?
Sure. Chief, I'm going to try a different tack on the community policing. A third try. What I hear from folks that they appreciate about San Carlos Police is they know what cars are supposed to be on the streets. They know, those lights are supposed to be on. They know the kids that are on the bicycles. The relationship of San Carlos residents to the police force is a tight one, and they know who's in downtown. And there is reasonable concern that is a relationship that will change. Can you address how would your team address those issues and address those concerns from our citizens?
Well, first of all, as many of the officers that we hire from your agency depending on the meet and confer issues, we would try to assign to your community. The other thing is that training will certainly be a factor, and as I've done in everywhere that I've worked, I'll be happy to bring your citizens in on a panel as part of the training to tell us how you want us to work in your area. And I've done that with different communities everywhere that I've worked, and it's really been helpful. For example, in San Jose, 2 very courageous members of the gay pride community came in and spent 2 hours talking to the officers because of the fact that they were having problems on the street with each other, or agreeing with each other, or communicating with each other. And those 2 gentlemen received a standing ovation. One of them is in the Board of Supervisors there, by the way, in Santa Clara County. But what I'm saying is that we will work to make sure that those relationships are very positive. And if there's something that we need to learn, we'll be happy to bring that into a class, or to set certain standards to make sure that everything works well. I would say also that some of the officers who work out here, the supervisor will make sure. Our supervisor is very proactive, and as Ron pointed out, we have usually 2 on each shift, and we have a little overage for vacation and time off and so forth, but the supervisors can also have an impact in ensuring that we treat people the way you expect them to be treated.
Chief, quick follow-up. We do have a number of neighborhood watch groups who have built up relationships. How would that move forward under your team?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the first part of that.
The question is, we have a number of groups that are set up neighborhood watch.
Right.
How would that relationship move forward under your?
Well, we have Neighborhood Watch, and Ron probably explain it better, is actually under a program at City Hall. But we have community policing officers that go out and work with each of the neighborhoods, and they do a marvelous job. And I can see us setting up a community policing officer program here in this city that would spend the majority of the time working directly with those groups, those neighborhoods, and meeting with them, resolving problems. I've been extremely impressed, and I'm looking at this as an outsider, with the fact that they set up these officers in a unit, they're handpicked, and what a marvelous job they do of resolving in-depth problems in neighborhoods, with business, with all these different groups. We would manage to do the same thing. And if Ron has anything to add, neighborhood, Ron, do you have anything? No.
I just think that the tone of the questions, I think it's undeniable that there's a cultural difference. I think if you merge with anyone, there's going to be a cultural difference. But also, police departments tend to roll over relatively quickly. I've been there 27 years. Within 10 years or so, people come and go. So when there's a merge, there's bound to be a certain amount of apprehension. But within a few years, it won't be us and you guys. It'll be us. And I think that can happen fairly quickly. And then the other comment in regards to politeness, earlier we were asked what supervisors do. Well, don't they supervise police officers? That's exactly true. And what command staff does is they ensure that officers behave in the way in which we expect them to behave. These officers here all by themselves could pretty much solve any crime. They don't need any assistance from me. Where command staff comes into play is insisting on a certain level of responsibility and behavior and making sure that everyone follows through. And that's what you're getting with us.
Okay, I have a couple more. Again, this will deal kind of with the culture, but a little bit different. I understand with consolidation with fire departments, it's a little easier based on you fight a fire the same way you'd fight a fire anywhere. But with policing, what happens if our 2 cities have different regulations? Say we ban smoking in public. How does that work for your police officers? How do the police officers in Redwood City know how to?
Yeah, you have city rules that would have to be disseminated to us, unique to the city of San Carlos. The officers would all operate under our general orders. There would be no further general orders from the San Carlos Police Department. They would all be general orders of the Redwood City Police Department. That doesn't mean city rules that you pass would not be disseminated and followed.
Okay. A couple other questions. I didn't see in the proposal, but A while ago, we cut our DARE program, we cut our school resource officers, we cut our police athletic league. Would those be available through this proposal, or would we have to add those on?
It's almost impossible to say. They currently exist with Redwood City, but we're undergoing the same process you are, and those positions are not in peril of ending, but they've certainly been downsized in the last several years.
Okay. And then one final question. In regards to how this would work, say we went with option one, which doesn't include the captain, who would we, if say I have a complaint, how do I bring that to the attention? Do I go to the chief? Do I go to the mayor? Is there a captain I would speak to? Who's the intermediary between myself and the police department?
Well, that really needs to be worked out because, as you know, Redwood City has 7, and you folks have. So there's going to be 12 city council people.
Yeah.
So I think that remains to be determined.
Okay.
A couple questions, like everybody else. So I've tried to get to know you guys better over the last month. One of the new ways is to go on your website, click around. So I've spent a lot of time both of the organization's sites. So my two questions are mainly maybe directed toward the chief. Would be how would you rate the quality of your website compared to other organizations in this business? And then secondly, how actively engaged is the police department in developing and working with your webpage? Or because why I ask that question, it may be something that the city staff does for you and you're not involved. So again, the question is, how do you rank or rate your own website, the police department of Redwood City, and how engaged are you in that site yourself or your people?
We are not, I'm personally not very engaged in it myself, but from what I've seen, it needs improvement. But the truth is that I've been there 3.5 years now, and I've set certain priorities for myself. That isn't one of the higher priorities for me at this time, and no doubt it will be in the near future. My priorities have been, number one, making the adjustments that needed to be made in order to combat crime, which was increasing, especially gang violence. My other priorities have been improving supervision. We were having real problems in our communication center, and our record center wasn't as productive as I thought as they should be. So we made some excellent moves there to hire some extremely competent supervisors, very professional. I'm very proud of those 2 selections. And then I've been concentrating on motivating the patrol force and so forth. So before long, I'll be refocusing more in the infrastructure. I understand that one of our sergeants in the detective division has been working to improve the website, as well as our administrative sergeants. So I would say, from what I've heard and from what I've seen, it needs improvement. One of the weaknesses I felt of the department was technology, and we still have a ways to go there. The purchase of the RIM system was a major step for our department, not only because of the better data that we're picking up and that we can display, but also because of the crime solution opportunities that are inherent in that information, especially as we link up with other agencies. So, I try to prioritize what changes I'm bringing about, and that, as I mentioned, was not one of my higher priorities, but we're getting there before long.
Great. Thank you very much. And then another one would be, and this is for anybody, so how do you, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not really sure how we even do this. How do you measure customer satisfaction? And again, the customer is not the criminals. Customer are the citizens. But, when people call 911 or, someone's house gets robbed, or you help someone with a traffic accident, and just general input, what kind of surveying or customer satisfaction, there's a lot of stats on clearance rates and response rates, but talking to the customer, what kind of input? Do you have a process in place to rate customer satisfaction?
Well, I'd like to mention that the city, I believe it's annually, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, does a survey for all of the departments regarding citizen satisfaction.
Good.
And I'm very pleased to say that the police department rates quite high in that survey. But that's one of the tools that we use to measure citizen satisfaction. And yet the important one for me is the number of complaints that we receive on an annual basis. because if they begin to rise, or if I see certain individuals that are being complained about, even if we don't sustain it, I think the old philosophy holds true that if there's smoke, there's fire, and we want to get in there and nip it in the bud. But those are two of the tools that we use in the police department.
Okay, I think that's great. Thank you.
One thing I wanted to clarify is that citizen survey we do, we've been doing it every other year.
Okay.
And the next time would be at the end of 2010, I believe, if it doesn't get cut in our budget process.
Good. Sounds like we'll be doing the same thing. That'd be great. And so kind of related to customers, that's where our citizens are most interested. Are we going to get good service, the same level of service? And so are you open? I know, we'll come up with some measures on service levels, response rates. I mean, there's all sorts of things that the police department we could rate to make sure that we're getting good quality service. Would you be willing to put any performance measures in our contract to the point to where we have 5 objectives? If we meet those objectives, you get paid. If you fail at several of them, there's some kind of discounting or penalty. And if you exceed, we actually pay more. Again, I'm not trying to get into the money item, but I'm trying to put a level of performance incentives that we get top quality service. Are you willing to entertain that? I'm not asking for a
If you
commitment.
let us analyze the data, certainly. I like our odds.
I know you shouldn't have brought a comedian to the meeting. I would say this, I can't speak to the financial incentive part,
Sure.
but I can tell you this. I realize that any time a partnership like this begins, there has to be an adjustment period and a period of time during which we mutually agree upon not only objectives and goals, but also on measurement standards. And certainly I'd be willing to work on that. I'd be willing, first of all, to let you set them, and but I'd like an opportunity to discuss them with you. So I've always felt very strongly you had to be honest about what you can and can't do. But yes, I think we could set standards that would satisfy your community, by which you could measure our work and let us know whether we're doing a good job or we're not doing a good job. And if necessary, at the end of the 2 years, give you ammunition to dump us if we're that bad.
Great. That sounds great.
Okay.
So let's do this. If we could each maybe stop with Andy, work our way down, and one or two more.
Okay. I only have 2
stay on
questions
time.
left.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah. I just have 2 questions left.
Thank you.
And these both might need to be flushed out later, but one is in regards to our fleet. Does the City of Redwood City plan on, if we go through with this contract, purchasing our fleet, or how? Yes? Okay. And the second one is, and I asked this, but I'll ask it in a different question, mainly to the chief, to see which way he's leaning. The way this is being presented, I think there's 2 possibilities. One is that essentially the City of San Carlos, we would be adding 3 beats onto your patrol area. You wouldn't be looking at Redwood City anymore. You'd just be looking at a larger patrol area. That's one possibility. The other is the City of San Carlos could possibly become a substation. If it was up to you as chief, which would you prefer? Which would make more sense to you on a policing standpoint?
I'm sorry, but I didn't understand the first part of the question. But regarding the substation,
Yeah.
if you were to determine that you wanted a captain and a secretary, certainly we'd like to have at least an office and the ability to communicate directly with our headquarters through computer as well as the phone lines and so forth. So in a sense, that would be a substation if you chose to have that.
Okay.
And what we would also do, if one of my captains took command here, I would want an office for that person too, that it can in a sense be a substation. And there, because of the load that captain would carry, I would want to set specific hours that someone would be in there. If we assigned a secretary, although we couldn't afford to do that without some additional resources, to assign a secretary to be there during the hours that the captain was not there, that might be one way to go. But I think that to satisfy your citizenry that they have immediate access, it might be a good idea to do it that way. Now, did I miss anything in terms of what you said?
That was perfect.
Okay,
All right,
great.
thank you.
I'm just curious, you added traffic to the proposal. Could you speak a little bit to what you anticipate that role being?
Ron, do you recall a staffing on the traffic proposal part?
Sure, it's been our experience that traffic matters are usually one of the most complained about issues in a community, and we recognize that's probably the case in San Carlos as well. So the person would be enforcing traffic laws and working traffic-related issues. There's those issues, and also I'm sure you have abandoned vehicle issues. That's a big issue for us. So they handle those types of issues as well, and they also work on crowd control matters from time to time.
I have no more questions.
I know this gentleman wanted to come up and ask a question, so I want to allow him to do that, if that's all right, Mr. Mayor.
I wanted to touch base on a couple things. Initially, I wanted to answer your question, and then Mr. Grisilli said something, and I wanted to answer that. And then you said something, and I want to answer that. So I'm going to go in reverse order here. From a police officer standpoint in Redwood City, I think that coming up with some sort of scale to quantify police work is a very difficult thing to do. There are a lot of variables that make that a very difficult task. However, I want you to know that our union will be open to absolutely listening to hearing whatever you have and trying to work with you on that. But there's obviously not enough time for that now, and I don't know what that would be. But that's my take on that. Mr. Grisilli, your question in regards to the flexibility of police officers in Redwood City and whether they would be able to adapt to San Carlos, because like you said, it is different. And a lot of Redwood City gets a lot of the press, and the part that gets a lot of the press and the activity is the part with all the activity. But keep in mind, there's a lot of areas of Redwood City west of El Camino that are very much like the city of San Carlos. And while there's officers in South Redwood City and along the El Camino who are chasing crooks and being very active and proactive and things like that, there are also officers at the same time working in that area west of El Camino, maybe a little bit of a slower pace, but taking their patience and time and treating those citizens up there as they need to be treated. So I don't think that the adaptation or the flexibility of any Redwood City police officer to working in San Carlos is going to be a problem at all. I'm confident in that.
Thank you.
Now, talking about quantifying police work, it's difficult to put down into words how citizens would be treated and how criminals would be treated. As you know from your cell phone ticket, being a resident or a citizen of a community obviously doesn't excuse you from violations or breaking the law. So if I had to break it down in the way that Redwood City police officers work, I think that you could be sure, just to answer your question, that I think we would treat the citizens with patience and respect, and we would treat the criminals with assertive professionalism. And that's all I have. Unless you have any questions.
Thank you. So I have one question that looks at the worst case scenario, because it was interesting. Mr. Klein asked what happens to our vehicles, and it was said they get purchased, right? So let's say we get to the end of the 2 years and we say, boy, this was, a big mistake. Or we get to the end of the 2 years and we say, you know what, we're back in the game and we want to have our own police department again. And so how do we pick that up? Maybe you don't know. Maybe that's a question for our city manager, not for you.
How you would create a different police department that would be for your city manager. If you left us, went to the sheriff's office, I'm sure they'd accommodate you at a much higher price by then.
Okay.
So I don't know the answer to your question. I know you want to purchase your fleet, get on a replacement schedule, and take it from there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, once again, thank you so much for coming forward.
Thank you all, gentlemen. Great presentation. I recommend we take a short break. Let's reconvene on this clock on the wall at 7:30, and we'll start with the sheriff's presentation. So if we could start gathering back in your seats there. Thank you for the, by the way, question. Really well. Kind of going back and forth kind of gave me a chance too to think about what I'm going to ask.
Yeah. Here's someone else's question.
I looked at Carl's. I've got like 30 of these. Oh my God, I looked at you and I thought it was mine. Bologna.
Whole different front row.
Yeah.
It's like you swap out baseball teams.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, Council, City of San Carlos welcomes Greg Monks. Welcome, San Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. Thank you for inviting us here tonight to present our proposal to provide law enforcement services to the City of San Carlos. I'm here representing the 635 men and women of the Sheriff's Office and here as your sheriff to let you know that we are honored that you are considering our services during this difficult time. This economic crisis has impacted all levels of the public sector, and I admire your courage to confront this challenge and to examine and consider bold moves to address it. You have an outstanding police department, and it would be our intention to provide the same high-quality service and professionalism to which you have become accustomed. And while it may appear as though you are considering outside agencies to provide this critical public safety function, it is important to note that the Sheriff's Office has been providing service to this community since 1856 and was the primary law enforcement agency here prior to your incorporation in 1925. We are very much a part of the San Carlos community. Generations of Sheriff's Office employees have called the City of Good Living home. Today, 34 of our employees live here. We maintain 2 warehouses here in San Carlos, one for our Office of Emergency Services equipment and one for our Special Operations Unit. Our Transit Bureau, which is comprised of 10 deputies, 2 sergeants, and a lieutenant, is headquartered at the Sam Trans building. And our Air Squadron is located at the San Carlos Airport. My jail planning unit's offices are in the Black Mountain Water building on El Camino, and our headquarters are right next door in the city of Redwood City. We have adjacent patrol areas in Devonshire Canyon, Harbor Industrial, and in our mid-county area. The point being is that we have always been very much a part of this community. The proposal we are offering is not a new or untested arrangement. We have been providing contract law enforcement services to incorporated cities in this county for over 50 years. This concept is in place in over 100 cities throughout the state of California. There are no uncertainties, no questions about who is responsible for which cost, no unanticipated expenses, and no loss of local control. All of these issues are spelled out in a legally binding contract which you, the customer, directs. And despite comments to the contrary, we understand and are quite experienced at municipal policing in an urban environment. I spent 12 years working for the city of Palo Alto. Under Sheriff Bolanos spent 27 years working for police departments, including 13 years as the police chief in Redwood City. And 48% of my sworn staff have prior city police experience. In short, we are prepared to provide high-quality public safety service to this community at a fair price. And we would be thrilled to welcome all of your police department's employees into our Sheriff's Office family. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Under Sheriff Carlos Bolanos, who will walk you through the specifics of our proposal. Carlos is a 30-year veteran of law enforcement, including 13 years as a municipal police chief. He is a graduate of the prestigious Post Command College and has served the last 3.5 years as my undersheriff. Carlos?
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sheriff. Honorable Mayor and council members, thank you for the opportunity to make a presentation on the Sheriff's Office proposal to provide law enforcement services to the community of San Carlos. I would also like to recognize the members of my proposal development team, Patrol Lieutenant Larry Shoemaker, who's here, Alina Portis, our Deputy Director of Finance and Administration, Rocio Kurtzen, our Administrative Services Manager from the Human Resources Department, and Ginger Bacchus, our Management Analyst. On the screen, you will see the outline of my presentation to you tonight. The Sheriff's Office is composed of 635 employees, which include 3 executive staff members, the Sheriff, myself, and the Assistant Sheriff. Our command staff is composed of 5 captains, a director, and a deputy director. We have 462 sworn personnel and 173 professional or civilian personnel. We are very proud of our approximately 250 volunteers who are available for emergencies and special events and who serve in a variety of volunteer units, such as our Deputy Sheriff Reserves, Air Squadron, Bay Area Mountain Rescue, Communications Unit, Dive Cliff Marine Unit, our 2 Youth Explorer posts, 810 for law enforcement and 830 for search and rescue, and our Mounted Search and Rescue Unit. If we enter into a contract relationship with you, these volunteers will all be made available to your community at no cost. The Sheriff's Office has 5 major divisions and our forensic laboratory. Our Corrections Division includes our 2 main facilities, the McGuire Correctional Facility and the Women's Correctional Center, where the majority of our inmates are housed in those 2 facilities. We also have the management of our alternative sentencing bureaus out at our Maple Street facility where our Women's Correctional Center is. Our Investigations Division includes our headquarters and airport bureau, the countywide and hospital security function, our Gang Intelligence Unit, the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, or NICRIC for short, and the various task forces which we operate or participate in, including the Cargo Theft Task Force, the Countywide Narcotics Task Force, Vehicle Theft Task Force, Joint Terrorism Task Force, and our REACT Task Force, which deals with computer-related crimes. Our Operations Division includes our patrol bureaus here in headquarters and on the coast, our Transit Bureau, and the Office of Emergency Services Bureau. Our Support Services Division includes the Bureau of Professional Standards, Training Unit, Court Security Transportation, Civil Enforcement, Personnel Backgrounds, our Technical Services Unit, Records Bureau, and the management of our firing range at Coyote Point. The Administration and Finance Division includes the accounting, budget, civil support, contracts and grants, and payroll functions. On a multi-jurisdictional basis, we also offer the following services: our Crime Lab, SWAT Team, DARE Program, Explorers, Office of Emergency Services, our Air Squadron, and our Mounted Search and Rescue. The Sheriff's Office has over 50 years of experience in providing municipal police contract services. We provide municipal law enforcement services to the communities of Portola Valley, Woodside, supplemental patrol services to the Eichler Highlands and San Mateo, and we also provide contract law enforcement services to Samtrans. Our accredited forensic laboratory also provides contract services to the cities of Concord, Hayward, Vallejo, and the city and county of San Francisco. Other contract services provided by the Sheriff's Office include warrant processing services for the cities of Brisbane, Half Moon Bay, and Millbrae. Why contract with the Sheriff's Office for law enforcement services? Our over 50 years of experience providing exceptional contract law enforcement services. Our leadership in the county, as evidenced by our various regional initiatives such as the Narcotics Task Force, Gang Intelligence Unit, and our role as mutual aid coordinator for the county. And the fact that we can offer more resources than any other law enforcement agency in the county. Another reason is our commitment to community policing. While many departments have had to cut their community service programs or activities due to budget cuts, the Sheriff's Office has maintained that our relationship with the communities that we serve is our highest priority. We continue to maintain strong school resource officer, DARE, GREAT, and Sheriff's Activity League programs. However, I will give you some reasons that I find equally important, and most paramount about that is the men and women of the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. The employees of the Sheriff's Office are some of the most hardworking, conscientious, dedicated public safety professionals that I have ever had the honor of working with. Another reason is the Sheriff's Office has tremendous office-wide support for this partnership. Our Deputy Sheriff's Association and our Organization of Sheriff Sergeants initiated meetings early on in this process with San Carlos police personnel to discuss issues of mutual concern. At this time, I would like to recognize the presidents of those organizations who are here with us tonight, DJ Wozniak from the Deputy Sheriff's Association and Jim Tanner from the Organization of Sheriff Sergeants. Thank you both for being here. Included in the packets that I provided you, you will find a 3-page document that outlines all of the community events and functions that the Sheriff's Community Policing School Resources Unit provides. Highlights include our Sheriff's Activities League, our DARE Great programs, our Star Camp for Youth, the North Fair Oaks Festival, various 4th of July events and parades, Neighborhood Watch, community dialogues, citizen academies, school safety assemblies, child safety seat education program, which was recently recognized for its community customer service, career day, bicycle safety meetings, sober prom, community cleanups, gang workshops, and our Youth Explorer programs. Of all the departments where I have worked, and this is my 4th, no organization embodies community service like the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. At this point, I will transition to what I believe are the main strengths of our proposal. First and foremost, every regular full-time San Carlos Police Department will be offered a position with the Sheriff's Office. In addition, our organization has all of the ranks, which enhances the opportunity for advancement or promotion. We also have a vast variety of assignments, including patrol, SWAT, K-9, civil enforcement, training, investigations, court security, transportation, corrections, as well as the various task forces that I mentioned previously. In discussion with our regional representative from the Peace Officers Standards and Training, or POST, we believe that we could transition all current San Carlos Police Department personnel into our organization without a new background process, polygraph, or psychological examination. We have also established an internal committee, which includes representatives from Human Resources, Risk Management, and the County Manager's Office, and have determined that the framework for transitioning all San Carlos Police Department regular employees into the Sheriff's Office already exists in our ordinances and civil service rules. We recognize the quality of all members of the San Carlos Police Department and are excited about the possibility of having them join our team. Our proposal includes the option of allowing the community to maintain the identity of its law enforcement officers. We are open to some blending of the cars and uniforms that the officers use, as well as having some of the current San Carlos Police Department officers continue to work in San Carlos. We believe our proposal has a superior level of supervision. We were initially requested to provide a baseline proposal for services. Our current proposal addresses the request for additional supervisory staff. Our proposal provides a guaranteed staffing level consistent at 1 sergeant, 3 deputies. Our proposal provides replacement for whatever reason. Someone calls in sick, is injured, on vacation, extended disability training, whatever. You have your bodies there at no extra cost to the contract. We have the largest investigations division in the county, which includes approximately 35 investigators or detectives working in the following units: homicides, sexual assaults, juvenile, property crimes, domestic violence, firearms compliance, countywide and hospital security, REACT, Gang Intelligence Unit, Narcotics Task Force, Vehicle Theft Task Force, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, NICRIC, which I mentioned earlier, Joint Terrorism Task Force, Cargo Theft Task Force. We believe this is also one of the significant strengths of our proposal. You are paying for 1 detective, but will receive the benefits of all Sheriff's Office resources at no additional cost. As you know, major investigations such as homicides, sexual assaults, officer-involved shootings are intensive, costly, and very time-consuming. We will absorb the full cost from beginning to conclusion, a feature that only the Sheriff's Office can provide. In addition, our proposal provides for a motorcycle traffic enforcement deputy and equal service for parking enforcement. Another strength of our proposal is that your cost for services is protected by contract. Our contracts are typically for a period of 3 years with an option to extend for an additional 3 years and are capped at 6% per year. Increases are equal to the negotiated cost of living and/or equity increases for Sheriff's Office sworn personnel. Future year adjustments will be included within the not-to-exceed annual payment obligations, but the actual adjustment may be less than the 6% maximum depending on the amount of future cost of living adjustments. You have the flexibility of determining what level of law enforcement service you would like in your community. The feedback from the communities that we currently serve through contract is that we provide an exceptional level of municipal law enforcement service in a cost-efficient manner. As I mentioned, this is an all-inclusive contract proposal. There are no additional charges except for special events that may require an increased police presence. This figure is the high range and is based on requests from city staff to add positions. Points for consideration include: we have offered other proposals with less costs, contract is still flexible and negotiable, and we offer flexibility with a yearly review to add or decrease service. Our personnel costs include top step base salary, experience pay, night shift differentials, specialty pay for detective, and advanced post. Personnel costs also include uniform allowance, county human resources charges, and general liability insurance. Our benefits include county retirement, health, vision, dental, retiree health, disability, tuition reimbursement, workers' compensation, an employee child care center, and Medicare. Relief has been budgeted for the sergeants and patrol deputies. Vehicles, this cost covers replacement and maintenance of a total fleet of 18 various vehicles, 11 marked vehicles. Our vehicles typically remain in service for 4 years or 80,000 miles, whichever comes first. Because San Carlos has their own vehicles, we would offer the option of taking inventory of the vehicles, coming to an agreement on fair market value, and crediting you for that value during the term of the contract if you wished. Associated costs. These costs include management costs, fiscal services, services personnel, investigating citizens' complaints, risk management, property evidence processing and storage, tech services, information services department charges, admin training costs, county council, payroll, grant management, radio maintenance and replacement, automobile liability, safety equipment, and replacement. Also included are support services costs, which are allocated based on the number of department personnel. Further negotiations based on the level of service the city desires can affect this figure. Additionally, San Carlos will no longer have to pay booking fees, narcotics task force fees, or forensic lab fees, which would result in an annual savings of approximately an additional annual savings of approximately $75,000. We understand that there have been some questions or issues raised by community members and department members during this process. Please allow me to address some of them. Our previous proposal provided for a fewer amount of sergeants. This was based on the city's request for a baseline proposal. The current proposal provides for the requested enhanced level of supervision. There have been concerns voiced about layoffs due to budget cuts and how that would affect any San Carlos personnel who came to the county. We have never had to lay off a sworn officer. We have already met our budget target for the upcoming fiscal year. We will continue to utilize vacancy management and budget monitoring as tools to ensure that we don't have to lay anyone off in the future. We have maintained vacancies in order to absorb any interested San Carlos police personnel to join our organization. A concern was raised at an earlier meeting about deputies leaving San Carlos to go to other parts of the county. That is ludicrous. The only time that would occur would be for a call for mutual aid or some other emergency whereby San Carlos officers would respond to if it happened tonight. The proposed level of supervision would ensure that this is never an issue. Field training and the background process have also been raised as concerns by current San Carlos officers. We have already discussed the development of an abbreviated transition process that does not include a background process and the development of an orientation process whereby we orient new employees to the Sheriff's Office in a supportive and welcoming manner. It has been mentioned that the Sheriff's Office does not enforce traffic laws. That is not true. It is state law that the California Highway Patrol has primary responsibility for traffic enforcement in unincorporated areas. However, in partnership with the California Highway Patrol, we do provide traffic enforcement in our unincorporated areas. In our contract cities where the Highway Patrol does not have primary responsibility, our deputies actively enforce traffic laws. As an example, during the last holiday DUI enforcement period, 7 Sheriff's Office deputies were honored by Mothers Against Drunk Driving for their efforts against drunk driving during this last holiday season. Additionally, the opportunity exists within our proposal for personnel to continue to utilize the San Carlos Police Station if desired. This would allow a place for San Carlos residents to continue to go for service from their police department. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time, and at this time we will take any questions you might have.
Do you want me to start, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
All right. Well, first off,
Mr. Klein.
Sheriff Monks and Under Sheriff Bolanos and to your whole staff, thank you very much for coming tonight. I've actually sat with Under Sheriff Bolanos before and gone through this, and it keeps getting more and more professional. It's a nice proposal. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, so let's start with some simple questions. And a lot of these are going to be the same questions I asked previous city because a lot of it's the same issues. For on-duty personnel, in your proposal, it's showing that you are guaranteeing 3-in-1 staffing at all times?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I know how it works with municipalities, but when it comes to mutual aid, if our neighbors, say Belmont or Redwood City, have an incident where they require more aid, the Sheriff's Department will react just the same way our police officers would, right?
Sure. The way mutual aid works is that we pretty much all support each other.
Yeah.
I happen to be the mutual aid coordinator for the county, so requests for mutual aid are supposed to go through the sheriff, but in reality, when there's an incident out in the field, and I think Redwood City referenced many times when your officers go there and their officers come here, that happens on a regular basis between neighbors. And then there's a more formal process where if it's a large-scale event somewhere else in the county, we muster personnel from various cities together and respond in a more organized mutual aid manner. But with respect to, it's one great thing about this county. Every police department, is very much engaged in that process. We all support each other, including the sheriff's office, and we get assistance from them. They get assistance from us. It's whoever's in the right place at the right time to help. So,
okay,
that continues. It goes on today, and it will continue, regardless of whatever arrangement you choose to pursue.
Okay, and you described all the other assets you have in the area with the Air Squadron and the Transit Police. Do you have any patrol, I don't know if you refer to them as beats or whatnot, in our vicinity or abutting San Carlos?
Yes, I think Under Sheriff brought a map, if you'd like to share it, that shows some of our surrounding areas. We have jurisdiction in Devonshire Canyon, Harbor Industrial, and then we have a large mid-county area to the west, which goes kind of up Kenyatta and in that area, and we can share that map there.
Okay, and then I'll ask one last question before I pass it on. When in regards to your DARE program, your GREAT program, your school resource offices, and your Sheriff's Activities League, as I mentioned earlier, we've had to cut all of those from our department. Would those be available through your department?
Yes, they would, and we would make that available at no additional cost to the contract.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Ahmad.
Thank you, Sheriff Bunks, Under Sheriff Polanos. Thank you for coming. It's an impressive proposal. A couple of questions. One of the things that you mentioned is that you would offer positions for all personnel. I wanted to verify that's sworn and non-sworn.
Correct. Yes.
So our
full-time employee.
Great. Okay. You had put into the proposal motorcycle traffic and as well as parking. Could you describe how the parking personnel would work in your proposal?
Do you have the breakdown on that?
I do. If I can go off the top of my head, I believe it involves 4 part-time parking enforcement officers, which I think is similar to what you have now, and then the 1 motorcycle deputy who would work on a rolling 4-on, 4-off schedule to ensure that you have coverage on all days of the week.
Excellent. Yeah, appreciate the nods behind.
I wanted to verify I was telling you the truth.
One thing that we have spent a good deal of time looking at on council is overtime. I noticed you haven't put overtime into this proposal. How did you manage to do that?
Well, what we did was, because we've been in this business for so long, we understand how relief works. And what we've done is we've built a relief factor into the cost of our positions. So if you do a one-to-one comparison of our cost of our position versus the cost of the Redwood City, for example, ours would appear higher, but we've included the relief factor. So what we're doing is saying, I think it's 400 hours that we factored.
427, I think.
427. So what we've done is figured for vacation, for training, because all sworn peace officers are required to do a certain number of hours of training each year, and for other, sick, whatever. We factor that into each position, and what we're telling you is that anything over and above that, we're going to, we'll cover that. And so we're not adding in overtime. Now, the exception to that, and I think the undersheriff mentioned special events. And the way we would look at that, and we'd want to talk to you about it, if it's an ongoing special event that you're going to have, let's say farmers market, and you're going to want additional personnel there every Thursday night. Okay, that's something we probably need to talk about and look at an overtime number. If it's an annual event, Art and Wine Festival or something that's a one-time thing, then we're not going to charge you for that. We've got our volunteers, we have our explorers, and we'll staff up for that. But so that's the only overtime that we would need to talk to you about. But other than that, if someone calls in sick, we're going to replace them. If someone goes on disability, we're going to replace them. And there's not going to be an overtime expense for the city.
I'll yield at this point.
Mr. Grisilli?
Again, reiterating, thank you, Sheriff Monks and Under Sheriff Polanos and your staff for this proposal. A couple of questions that I asked the other folks too. As indicated, you'd be offering each of our full-time employees positions. Do you have any concept of the salary differential for our sworn officers relative to your department?
I think it's a 10% increase.
Is that just salary, Chief, or is that all
salary?
Salary.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't do the total comp.
That's okay. That's fine. Just trying to get a ballpark figure so everyone understands. How about the non-sworn personnel, though? Do you have that number?
I do.
And again, I apologize for putting you on the
The problem
spot.
is that some of them, we don't have direct comparables, but
Sure.
the community service officer, for example, is a 29% increase.
Okay.
The administrative assistant, let's see, that's pretty close to executive secretary, 2%. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Some are lower, some are higher.
Yeah. Right.
I'd be glad to provide.
No, that's
those.
okay. Some are, in that sense, I appreciate because they're all different positions. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No.
In the non-sworn positions, it can go up or down depending on the position and the person that would have.
Yeah, for example, records technician looks like a 15% decrease.
I understand. I'm just trying to get just making sure that everybody.
You can pass this around if you'd like.
That'd be fine. Again, just trying to get a broad perspective on that.
A police officer's 10%, sergeant's 2.5%, and then with the non-sworn, there are some that would receive an increase, but many that also would see the opposite.
Okay. One more quick question. You indicated that you had never, I think I heard you say that you hadn't laid off any sworn officers under Sheriff Mullins. And I know I've been reading in the newspapers how the county is a $150 million problem. So, in effect, as you said, I think, I'm again trying to repeat what you said, you sort of allowed for the fact that this would happen. In other words, you've got some positions that might be unfilled. So that way you would, you see where I'm going here. I can't believe that this, your department, again, with all due respect, would be spared of some possible cuts.
No, it's a good question. We had a pretty significant budget cut this year, $4 million that we had to deal with. But we knew that it was coming, so we managed our vacancies, knowing that we were going to be eliminating positions. We did other things, too, in terms of cutting in other areas, becoming more efficient, reducing vehicles, for example, cutting, increasing revenues. We were able to increase revenues. So at the end of that process, we eliminated 20 positions from the sheriff's office. Mm-hmm. And but we did that through attrition, through managing vacancies, and we didn't end up having to lay off anybody, as a matter of fact.
I've got some others, but I'll wait.
And then, once we were approached by your city and started discussions, we had extra vacancies that we had, because we weren't sure exactly what our cut was going to be, so we wanted to be safe. We kept additional vacancies, and then now we have those vacancies to work with. So it's kind of opportune timing in terms of having that ability.
Okay, thank you. I'll have some others later.
You guys are so big, I feel like if I got caught by one of your guys for a cell phone violation, here comes the air squadron, here comes... your contract is up, not with us, the one we're talking about, but the contract with your employees, it was set for Redwood City, I think, 2012. You're 2012 as well?
Yes.
Okay. And then your retirement formula is what?
350.
350. Okay. And I wanted to dive into the vehicle thing a little bit, if you don't mind, because I know we've got, you had on your chart about, like, for instance,
18 vehicles.
one motorcycle, and I know when you go down to our garage, we've got more than one motorcycle, for example. I don't know exactly what we have, but can you just explain that a little bit? You don't have to go into all the detail, but what were you saying there?
What I was saying was, we have budgeted for the proposal 18 vehicles for your organization, of which 18 would be marked vehicles, and I believe one of those would be the motorcycle. I can.
And so, if we have surplus right now, we would
what
mothball
we
those, or
mentioned
what?
is that what we would do is inventory your vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, since we would be absorbing your assets, we would inventory those vehicles, come up with a fair market value, and then we would give you that credit towards the contract. So let's say all the vehicles amounted to $250,000. We would give you that $250,000 discount on the first year of the contract, or maybe spread it out over the 3 years of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
The same with, I don't know if we've delved that deep into the equipment, but firearms, if your officers, if the city owns your firearms, then we would do the same thing with that as well.
Okay, thank you. That's it for now.
Yeah, first, just a comment, Mr. Grisilli was talking about some numbers there. I want to compliment actually both organizations, Sheriff's Office and Redwood City. They've been in pretty much the same situation that our city has been in, which there's been no headcount growth at all. One organization's flat, one's down a few, and their cost spending over 3 years has been really small or nothing. So you've been living the tide that we all have been trying to control, and by controlling headcount and controlling expense, I compliment both of your organizations, and so that gives me confidence in how you're managing the bottom line. First question kind of relates a little bit to my customer satisfaction, but we have an example here. You have two cities, Portola Valley and Woodside. You've been doing business for a while, so how do you, or is there a way to survey or get information on how you're providing levels of service to those cities?
Well, we do a survey, an annual survey. It's called CARES, and we do it through a variety of our different clients. As you know, we're a very diverse organization with the courts and the corrections and patrol, and so we are, proud of the results of the surveys. I believe we get a 98% favorable rating from that survey. I don't think that we specifically target those two communities. I know that we have those surveys available at our substations, and
but they're included in the survey that you're doing.
Survey, yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Second question deals with, on one hand, you're a large organization, so there's plenty of opportunity. There's also a need for, the business need of certain things that need to get done. So when we look at opportunity for employees, rotation, advancement, and so forth, I mean, you've talked a little bit about that, but how does opportunity occur at the sheriff's office? How much rotation, how much opportunity, how much choice does a trained officer have in an area that he or she wants to go into eventually?
That's a great question, and I think it probably speaks to one of the strengths that I believe we as an organization enjoy, and that's the breadth of assignment, the breadth of experience that our employees acquire. And we have an annual transfer process that we conduct every year. Deputies are able to fill out a preference sheet of what the assignments that they would be interested in, and then every November we have a process where our lieutenants come together and they prepare for transfers that occur in January. Throughout the year, we have specialty assignments that come available, whether it's detective or one of the many task force opportunities that the undersheriff talked about. And when those occur, people are able to submit an interest, and they go through an interview process. And so as a result, deputy sheriffs tend to migrate through these different opportunities, different areas, understanding that our two big areas are patrol and corrections, but we have many other opportunities. So as a result, after 10 or 15 years, we end up with a deputy sheriff that's worked in the courts, worked in the jails, worked in patrol, worked in investigations, maybe in the Office of Emergency Services, has been involved in the whole NIMS ICS process, and maybe worked as a law liaison in our OES area. So we feel that we end up with very well-rounded individuals. And then promotion in the sheriff's office happens very similar to the way it happens in your police department and others, where people apply. There's a civil service process which involves a test and an oral process, an oral board. But we have many more opportunities. We have as we stated, we have 48 sergeants and 16 lieutenants. So, I mean, the number of opportunities for our people are pretty significant.
Okay, and a related question, if an officer is interested in keeping or staying in San Carlos, would there be opportunity for someone to be assigned?
Sure. We've talked about from a transition standpoint, and this is something that's been discussed with our labor organizations as well. We understand that this would be a transition for the community. We would be willing to look at keeping those officers in place for a period of 5 years, which would make for a smooth transition. Your question before about new people coming in, I think that there would be a natural occurrence where individuals working here would probably want some of those opportunities that we've talked about. And as they left, new people would come in and learn that community, learn those neighborhoods, learn those cars that belong on the street and those that don't. And there would be a slow transition that would occur over that period of time. Some people might want to leave right away. Some might never want to leave. So, I think we would work closely with you as the customer to make that process smooth.
That's all I have for now. Mr. Grocott, other questions?
First one is relates to in your proposal. You give us two other communities that you provide service to: Portola Valley and Woodside. You used to provide service to East Palo Alto. Tell us a little bit about that. Why are you no longer in East Palo Alto?
Sure. We patrolled East Palo Alto prior to its incorporation, and then when East Palo Alto incorporated in the early 80s, they started their own police department, and they were pretty much on their own for a period of time. And during the run-up to the late 80s and early 90s, things started to the violence in East Palo Alto increased, and the gang and drug problems associated with that. And it culminated in 1992 when East Palo Alto was dubbed the murder capital of the United States. They had 42 homicides in a city of 25,000. So if you were to extrapolate that to per 100,000, it would be, off the charts. So it was then that we returned to East Palo Alto. Pretty much overnight, we sent, I think it was 18 of our people into East Palo Alto. At the same time, the California Highway Patrol sent, I believe, 14, and then several cities in the south part of the county also contributed personnel. So it was really a overnight influx of police officers, deputy sheriffs, traffic officers that really came in and turned things around, at least temporarily. And it went from 42 homicides, I think they had 6 the following year. And it was a good demonstration of police officers and deputy sheriffs on the street can make a difference in a situation like that. So we stayed for a while, and at no cost to the city. And then over time, we transitioned to a contract arrangement where we supplemented their police department. So the police department never went away, but the police department was going through some very difficult times in terms of quality of personnel, in terms of turnover, in terms of being short staffed. So over the next several years, we transitioned from supplementing their patrol and getting partial reimbursement for that to taking over investigations. And for a period of time, we were their detective bureau, did their investigations, and that was by contract. And then over time, when the new police chief came in, the current police chief, his goal was to take back essentially everything and have it all under the police department, and have the police grow the police department to be able to essentially take care of all their own needs. So what we did was we then started scaling down our presence as he was building up his detective bureau to the point where eventually we were able to pull out our people, and they have since done it all themselves.
If I could just add, as early as I think last year or 18 months ago, Chief Davis contacted me and asked if we could put together a contract for investigations because they were seeing an upsurge in violence, and he was short-staffed. So when the organization needs assistance, we are typically the ones that they come to and try to work out a contract.
Okay, I have a couple more questions, but that was a long answer, so I would like to.
No, please. No. I just like the rotation more.
Okay.
That's good.
All right. I've got 2 more on my list, or 3 more on my list. I'll ask one more right now.
I'll give you short answers this time.
Okay. No, that's fine. It was a good answer. It
Yes.
deserved the long answer. That was much appreciated. It was mentioned before about dispatch. Can you speak to that? We're currently under contract with Menlo
Sure.
Park.
Dispatch at the county is done by Public Safety Communications. I think she's right here, Jamie Young, who's the Director of Public Safety Communications. So when we first started discussions with your city, we had Jamie prepare a proposal for dispatch, and I think that was presented to you at one point. And then we were later told that you have a contract with Menlo Park. So if at some point in the future you wanted to look at that, I'm sure Jamie would give you the great price that she quoted earlier.
So the proposal would go up a notch with
Yes.
dispatch included.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just to follow up, So there won't. You don't see any problem with dispatch being out of Menlo Park?
No.
Okay.
No.
Great. I asked this question of the Redwood City folks too, and you may have the answer, or it may be a meet and confer item relative to you're going to be offering all our employees opportunities. What about the seniority aspect of that? And I know that's a very difficult
Yeah,
thing.
no, our situation would be the same as what Redwood stated, that your employees would come over and their seniority would begin at the point that they come over.
Okay.
So they would not be able to transfer their seniority with them.
All right. And
We did, though, talk about probation. Right.
would there be a probation period for our employees?
Oh, no, there would only be, the only probation period would be for employees who are currently on probation.
Okay.
And they would have to complete their 18 months.
I understand.
Anyone who's off probation now would be off probation
Okay.
with us.
And the last question I have is, and I think you spoke to this under Sheriff Bolanos, but it's a 6% increase each year. Let's assume that things got better tomorrow, and let's say the employees were able to negotiate a 7% benefit package, salary, everything, 7% increase. Ours would be capped at 6%.
That's correct.
Now, let's say for the next year, though, because they were looking at a 3 or 2 year contract, they said 7 and then 5 and then 6, let's say. The second year, it was 5. It would only go up 5?
That's correct.
Okay,
It's
so
done
it
on
wouldn't-
an annual basis. It's
so it
not
wouldn't
a
be- it wouldn't be a
cumulative rollover.
Okay, I just
No,
thought I'd
there's
ask
no
the question.
No, it's a good question.
All right,
No.
thank you. That's all I had.
Mr. Klein?
Yeah, go for it.
I have some clarifications. I keep hearing this word, and I'd just like to explain to me, what is an explorer? We don't have those, obviously, or I think I would know what they are. But I
Well,
keep...
Explorer posts are
Oh, we do?
affiliated with the Scouts,
Oh, okay.
and it is a post. It's like a scouting post. And we have 2 posts. We have one that is search and rescue. So these are young men and women, young boys and girls, that
Wait, we're talking young, not young like me, right?
not young like you.
Okay.
They're typically teenagers.
Okay.
And I'm not sure the exact age.
I think it's
Below
up to
20.
18. Below 20.
Yeah, 14. Here's a former.
Yeah, that's about right.
Lieutenant Shively is a former Explorer Post advisor. So 14 to 20, and our search and rescue post, they have meetings, they have training, they go through an academy, and they learn about search and rescue, and then we actually use them for search and rescue missions. So they'll come out and they'll help us search for people. They'll help us do evidence searches, and they go through we send them on, once a year, we send them on a trip to somewhere in the United States where they have a big kind of a jamboree of other ones. And then we have another post that is the law enforcement post. And these young people learn law enforcement techniques, and it's kind of like a mini academy where they learn about law enforcement. They learn how to direct traffic, things like that. We use them and make them available to cities and other organizations for charity events and things like that. So you will see them out directing traffic at the Concours, or at the Pumpkin Festival, or at the Dream Machine, major events at the North Fair Oaks Festival. So it's a great way for young people to be exposed to public service, to law enforcement. We've had several of these young people join our organization. I'm getting the okay. Anyway, it's a good opportunity
You
for
get the
kids
point.
to get to get exposed to law enforcement.
Okay. We don't have a flashing light that says, wrap up, so speak as long as you would like to. Another question. We have an unincorporated area within our city that's surrounded completely by San Carlos. Would that essentially be swallowed up in our bureau?
No.
Or how would you go about doing that?
Well, right now, the Emmett Harbor.
No, I'm talking about the Devonshire Canyon.
Oh, Devonshire. Right now, those get responded to by our 10, one of our other B cars. That would continue.
Okay.
We would, and we have a similar situation with Woodside and Portola Valley, where we have surrounding unincorporated jurisdiction.
Okay. And then 2 last questions. One, we have a very active CERT program in San Carlos, and currently it's run through our JPA Fire Department. But if that were to change, does the Sheriff's Office have a CERT program, and do you offer that training to citizenry?
We do not directly, although through the Office of Emergency Services we coordinate and fund much of the CERT activity throughout the county. So, for example, in Woodside, Portola Valley, they have very active CERT. So we work very closely with them, more through the Office of Emergency Services, and that's something that you have access to now.
Okay. And then my last question, the sheriff's office is not in the PERS program, is it?
No, we are what's called the 1937 Act, Retirement Act county, so we have a separate system.
And if you were to compare how the relative health of the two, PERS is going through major issues right now. How is the retirement program for the county doing?
I would say that the county retirement system is in better shape. We have a former board member here. DJ, would you attest to that?
Sam Sarah had its best year ever.
If you could come up to the microphone so we could get that. Okay, thank you.
DJ is our president of our Deputy Sheriff Association. He was also an elected board member to the retirement system.
Sam Sarah, last I heard just a month ago, was up 33% for the fiscal year, which is one of the best years we've ever had. So they did take a hit last year like everybody else, just like PERS, but very quietly they're almost back to 1995 or 2005 levels. So they've come quite a ways.
Gotta find out who your broker is. That's all the questions I have.
One of the things that we saw in one of the previous proposals was the option of a local captain. How does the sheriff's proposal deal with that issue?
Well, our proposal includes a local captain, so it would be essentially like a contract chief. So, and that's included in the cost.
Commissioner Armand, do you mind if I jump in right on that? So in regards to a local captain, would that captain be attending our staff meetings? Would that be who we go to if we have issues?
Yes, that captain would be here on the ground, available to you to come to your city council meetings. I mean, essentially whatever you would want.
So
accessible to the community.
That captain would just be our chief, for a better term.
Essentially be your chief.
Okay.
And it would have a, that would be your primary interface in terms of contract issues.
One of the other things, we spent a good deal of time talking about the cultural aspects of how our community views our police force and vice versa. The previous respondents had talked about training for their officers. How would you see that type of training working for the Sheriff's Department?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we think that the transition, by maintaining the same personnel in the city, would initially address any transition issues, and that we don't see that there would be a mass exodus at any point. So there would be a gradual, changing, if you will, where someone went for a promotion, or someone went to retire, or someone went to some other opportunity in our department, and they would be replaced by one of our folks who perhaps wasn't a prior San Carlos officer, and that's where that acclimation, if you will, would occur. In terms of training, as the undersheriff mentioned, community policing, working with the community, treating people with respect and dignity, that's part of our culture. That's how we do business. So I wouldn't see that type of training. There'd be a certain amount of training in terms of orientation, learning the streets, things like that, and that would occur as these people kind of cycle in over time. I don't know, Carlos, do you have another?
No, I think that addresses it.
Last question. I spent a little time talking to the mayor of Cupertino. Cupertino has contracted their police services to the Santa Clara Sheriffs. And one of the things that she had mentioned was that through their local captain, they actually do make personnel choices, such that the sheriff may say, these are 12 people, you've got 6 requisitions, you have approval on who can come in. Do you anticipate that being the type of relationship that we would have, or how would those assignments be made?
Yes, with our client contract agencies, we give the client very much, say in how that works. Now, it's not a you get to pick whoever you want thing. It's more of a relationship that's built over time.
Understood.
And I would envision this working here where your contract chief or captain would be the one that would be selecting individuals, and if there were openings in this bureau, they'd have an opportunity to look at different people and select different people. Now, one of the nice things about a arrangement like this is that there is someone working here that doesn't work out. It's easy to find another place for that person to work, and so and that's not always the case in a small department. So that's one of those niceties of a contract where you may never see that person again.
Those are all my questions, Mr. Mayor.
So I'm interested in another area on how your management team is setting some 2 or 3 year objectives and mainly the investments in technology. And so if you could talk a little bit about some of your goals and capital improvements and investments that you have planned. Again, I don't know the business well enough to know what a technology would be in your area, and you don't need to disclose that, but how active and what do you see coming up in the next couple of years in this area? How active are you with that?
Sure, I'd be glad to. The undersheriff oversees a committee that we've formed, kind of an executive level committee within the sheriff's office that meets regularly between our operations folks and our technology folks as a way to look at technology decisions from a strategic perspective, and looking forward and looking at the various technology investments that we make to make sure that they fit together, that they support our mission. In terms of infrastructure, the big thing on the horizon for us is building a new jail. Not a technology issue, but that's a major project that we're doing right now. In terms of the technology, the biggest undertaking that we're doing right now is we're the lead agency on a project called CopLink, which is a Bay Area wide interoperability project that connects. The idea is to connect all records management systems in the 9 Bay Area counties together with a larger system that is throughout California. And the hope eventually is to interface that with state and federal systems as well. And that should give us eventually that single entry, single point of connecting the dots, so to speak, between all the different disparate systems that are out there. I think Chief Cobruvius talked about RIMS. RIMS is, we believe, is a good records management system. We're looking at transitioning to that system. We currently have a system called Tiburon, which is not meeting our needs as much as we'd like, so we're going to transition to RIMS. We've set the money aside for that, so we're going to be able to make that transition. On the radio front, we're looking at there's a Bay Area interoperability project underway right now. It's a massive radio project that's looking at the whole release of the 700 megahertz system to public safety. As you know, 700 megahertz used to be for television. Now it's being gobbled up, and it's going to be dispensed to public safety. So we have our oar in the water on that as well. We're looking at taking part in that. I have concerns about interoperability. We have good radio interoperability in our county. We've had it since the mid-'70s, but that's based on old technology. It's analog, conventional technology. We at the Sheriff's Office transitioned to a digital trunked radio system a few years ago, so which is narrow-banded, which I'm probably getting too technical for everybody here, but so we feel very good about where we are with respect to our investments in radio infrastructure, in the direction that we're going in terms of data interoperability, and we are the undersheriff is managing this committee to make sure that we do all these projects in a coordinated and strategic manner.
Okay. And last question, a non-technical question, go the other way. So what's one area of difference in supporting a municipal versus county structure?
In terms of the organization or how we do business or
How you approach the customer? Is there something you do differently?
Well, I think when we have a contract relationship with somebody, they are our customer. So we as we practice a community-oriented policing philosophy, we try to tailor our law enforcement services to the various communities that we serve. When there's a contract relationship, it's the same thing.
Okay, so having that relationship is one thing, but is there any difference in supporting a Portola Valley, Woodside versus the county, San
well,
Mateo?
the main difference is the traffic issue. So we in our contract cities, we do everything. We essentially are the police department. So we do everything, traffic, the whole thing. In the unincorporated parts of the county, California Highway Patrol has primary traffic enforcement responsibility, but our folks do traffic enforcement. You know, out on the coast, just like anywhere else, people call about traffic. They call about, speeding vehicles, stop signs, things like that. So we work in conjunction with the California Highway Patrol.
That area of service is different.
Yeah. But the primary difference, though, looking at it from a more kind of philosophical standpoint, if you will, is the difference between a city relationship and the sheriff relationship is that I'm the sheriff for everyone in this county. I was elected by everyone in this county. So I have a statutory and legal obligation to all citizens of San Mateo County. So, and I am the mutual aid coordinator for the county. So I can do things for a city, even a contract city, that perhaps another agency that partners with them can't, only because I'm their sheriff as well. So, and I have that joint jurisdiction throughout the county.
Great. Thank you.
I don't have any more questions.
A couple more. I had asked Redwood City about this idea of joint governance, so I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah, the JPA is not something that I would be really interested in. I mean, I don't know how it would work, to be honest with you. I think it's a I just don't. I think what we're proposing is a clean, very time-tested. It's stood the test of time, of litigation, of experience. It's very clear. That would be way too confusing,
convoluted.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, it's a good idea.
At least you're honest.
And we actually have a good example of it in the Narcotics Task Force.
Yeah.
And that's been around for 30 years, and it works great. But for this type of arrangement, I just don't think that would work.
OES is that way too, right?
Pardon me?
OES.
Yeah, OES is a great one. That's a great example.
Yeah. This you gave me a long answer before. I'm going to give you a long question, maybe. It's sort of a two-part question. You're just like with Redwood City. You know, your costs are higher per officer. So I guess, you know, where are we finding the savings? You're giving us, in the proposal, you upped your sergeant coverage. You're giving us a captain that is sort of like a chief. So how is it that we're finding savings? And then to go further with the question, it almost seems like, you know, not to unravel all this hard work that you've done, but we pay less, a little bit. Our retirement system is two-tiered, so we have some savings there. What if we just kept our officers, kept our equipment, you know, cars, guns, everything, and just bought from you whatever it is that's saving us money, which I guess is the command structure?
Where you save money, I believe, is that you are able to staff to a kind of a basic level. And without all the frills, you're flattening your organization, and you are not worried about a lot of the backroom stuff, training, personnel, and investigations, which really isn't a backroom function, it's a frontline function. Where you save money is having one detective, you pay for one detective, but essentially you have access to, our entire detective bureau. So that's a big hidden cost there, where you get one officer involved shooting, you get a homicide, double, triple homicide, and we're talking tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of the investigation and the in overtime and court costs and all that stuff. So essentially, we're saying to you, we're going to buy all that. We're going to take that on ourselves. So it's that ability to staff you at a baseline level, not worry about those extras or having to peak up during busy times, and the assurance that we're giving you that whatever happens, we're going to be there for you, and we're going to bring whatever it takes to address the issue. So having that true economy of scale behind us is, I believe, where you save the money. Now, if you start looking at it on a per position thing, then yeah, it kind of gets lost. But and we have a pretty efficient schedule. The 12 plan is pretty efficient because 6 at night to 6 in the morning. It's a very straightforward schedule. It doesn't.
So if
not
I could,
paying for extra people when you don't need them.
So if I could summarize back, I know Mr. Royce talked with the other department about our overtime. Our detectives, we had quite a bit of overtime last year with detectives, and we had quite a bit of overtime with patrol officers, and I guess that would get flattened. That's kind of the back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's that loaded cost. When we told you that we included the replacement cost, and then there's also a line in there for what is it, other associated costs, or and that's kind of like, I view that as you're buying into our organization.
Mm-hmm.
You're buying a stake in the organization, and in return, I'm assuring you that whatever you need, we're going to take care of it.
So that $400,000 is sort of a contingency fee.
Well, it's kind of contingency, but it's real cost.
Yeah.
But it's buying a stake in the department, and now you're part of the family, and
Mm-hmm.
we're going to do whatever we need to meet your needs.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One follow-up. And I see an officer from Redwood City, so I'll pass this also to Redwood City obliquely. One of the crimes that we deal with in San Carlos is identity theft and computer fraud. Can you tell me how the Sheriff's Department is equipped to handle these? How would people in San Carlos make reports? Where does that go?
Well, we are the lead agency in our county on the REACT Task Force, which is the High-Tech Crimes Task Force. They handle a lot of our those types of crimes, so you would have access to their services. So, I mean, but in terms of the mechanics of how it would occur, yeah, I mean, as it does now with any crime, the victim would call the police department would go out and take an initial report. Then that report would be referred to the Detective Bureau, and then the Detective Bureau would determine who best to handle that. So if it was a case that really rose to the level of a REACT investigation, then that case would be referred to REACT, and they would conduct the follow-up investigation. We fully understand that one detective you're paying for is not going to be able to handle the caseload here. So that's why we're able to save you some money, because we have detectives that specialize in major crimes, homicide, sex crimes, juvenile, all different categories.
Thank you.
Not really a question, just to the Sheriff's Department and to Redwood City as well. I know this isn't free. You don't do this. This takes staff time, and I just want to say thanks one last time to both the Sheriff's Department and Redwood City, because even in this budget time, you took time and you took money out of your budgets to do this, to make these proposals to us as a city and as a council. So just once again, thank you very much, and to Redwood City as well. I understand that you all took a lot of time to do this, so it's very touching, and just thank you.
Great. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
So just to let you know what we're going to do here, we'll take a little intermission, a little break here for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to public comment. We're very interested in what your thoughts are. If you do have any questions, we'll get staff to jot those down. Again, just to talk to you a little bit to clarify what our process is here. This is basically a study session. We're here to invite these two organizations to in person present these two proposals. Over the next month and a half, though, let's take 2 steps back. Council first will be meeting. We'll probably have 1 or 2 more meetings specifically on this area. The first decision point would be, should we outsource? That's the first thing. No decision on that has been made. If the answer to that is yes, and then we get to the second question, who? And we have 2 proposals here that are in front of us. Again, the timing of that will be the month of May, the month of June. We need to be pretty well tidied up with our budget by the end of June, since July 1st begins the beginning of the fiscal year. So I just wanted to clarify that. Also, if we could get slides, I'm sure that's probably already planned. We will be, of course, posting these 2 set of slides on our San Carlos site here within the next day or 2, I would assume. That'd be okay. And for anybody, of course, watching on TV or here in person, and on the web, I guess you may know this, probably the people on the web, but this broadcast is available as an archive. So if you're talking to friends or family or anybody and you want to kind of remember what somebody said or just go back and review it, you just go to our city webpage, go to the meeting, and go to archives, and you could actually watch the video. And did I just cut out? No. I'm fine. And actually skim ahead and get to various parts of the meeting that you want to. So with that, again, let's take until 10 minutes to a break here. We'll get back at 10 minutes to, and we will welcome public comments. There are forms to fill out in the back corner if you'd like to speak. Thank you.
Have these special meetings more often. I like these breaks.
Yeah.
Again, if you have any speaker cards, just bring them up here. Christine?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, again, we're interested in your thoughts, any questions you have. First, let's see, I have a couple here, Ken Castle and Heidi Morrison. Ken, if you come up first. Ken, kind of keep your time to about 2 minutes. I'll be a little flexible with that. I don't have a lot of speaker cards, so please.
Good evening, Mayor Royce and City Council members, and thank you for the presentations from the various agencies. My name is Ken Castle, and I'm the organizer of the White Oaks Neighborhood Watch, which is, I believe, one of the largest neighborhood watch organizations in San Carlos. We're just a little bit over a year old, and we've had absolutely tremendous success working with the San Carlos Police Department in, I think, in many ways, cutting down crime and creating a level of awareness that hadn't existed in our neighborhood before. This works well because we're able to pick up a telephone and call a commander or call a sergeant or call the police chief, and things get done quickly when there is a problem. And the biggest concern that I have is any kind of outsourcing model would have to take into account this very tight local outreach that we have. Addressing the Redwood City proposal, I know that Redwood City has a very good neighborhood watch organization. I've had the occasion to visit there and see presentations from their officers. I think that it would be absolutely incumbent upon that city, if we were to go in that direction, to have people that have close contact with our neighborhoods. I think that would be difficult under the model that's been outlined in these in the proposal, where we essentially would lose all of our command structure, all of our sergeant structure, and essentially just have to make do with our officers. And we have very fine officers. The whole department is terrific. But if you want to get something done and you want to get some information, you really want to talk to a command structure individual, whether it's a commander or a sergeant. And I think that would be a weakness in the Redwood City proposal. It would essentially be dismantling our department, which has shown that it has a great talent and great ability to solve crimes, and that would be a shame. I do think, again, that Redwood City has good community services, but I think it would be more difficult for them to step up and have officers that would be as connected to the community as our officers are. I also believe that the issue of dispatch, we've had an outsourcing situation with Menlo Park, and while it may look good on paper, in fact, those of us who have had experience with that dispatch center have had varying types of responses, a lot of which can be traced to the fact that the people who are answering the phone don't live here. And I've even had occasions where they've said, oh, don't worry about those people that are doing the illegal garbage collection. They do that all the time. They're just poor people, and never mind. So I think that is a concern. With regard to the Sheriff's Department, I think they certainly have a large structure that could easily absorb us. I do believe, and I agree with Councilman Grocott, that there's more, I think, strength in cities working together or with other agencies on a JPA arrangement and not on a contract basis. I really believe that we shouldn't be concentrating the discussion merely on which of two entities that we choose to outsource on a work-for-hire basis, but really talk about the other options that are available out there in terms of keeping our department, in terms of JPAs, and other things. And I would hope that the city consultant that is hired would look at that and not just on how to implement one of two proposals. Other than that, I'll reserve my comments for another time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken, very much. Thank you. Heidi? And after Heidi, Suzanne Shepard.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. Heidi Morrison, Police Service Technician, or PST, with the San Carlos Police Department. Tonight I'll be speaking on behalf of the AFSCME Local 829 and the non-sworn members of the San Carlos Police Department. First and foremost, I would like to make clear that our membership respects both the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department and the Redwood City Police Department for the police services they provide to their respective cities and counties. Nearly 2 months ago, I stood in front of you in the City Council and spoke about what the daily duties of the non-sworn members of the San Carlos Police Department are, and how that could or would change if outsourcing was not carefully considered. Tonight, I'm here to tell you, the City Council and the citizens alike, that the non-sworn members of the San Carlos Police Department stand united against the Redwood City Police Department proposal. The proposal presented to you tonight leaves out many critical factors, most importantly, effects to our full-time staff. Under the Redwood proposal, there are only 2 spaces for full-time non-sworn employees. These positions are not guaranteed to the San Carlos employees. In fact, no positions are guaranteed to San Carlos non-sworn or sworn officers. In comparison, the Sheriff's Department's proposal, as described, has promised all of our staff employment. Redwood City's proposal's cuts to staffs are far more significant than the original proposed 20% cuts to the police services. And to reiterate, the city's 20% cuts that would allow our police department to stay intact and full, operating as it currently does. If we are able to keep our police department whole and provide service to the public as we always have, with cuts alone, why would we consider the Redwood proposal where there is no guarantee of the same type of service and more than half of our staff could potentially lose their jobs? On paper, the Redwood proposal may read well, but I beg the City Council to ask, without our records technicians, police service technicians, and community service officers, who is doing their work? With so many of our officers and non-sworn staff losing their jobs, how can we possibly say that the service level will be the same or even better as offered? We have made the commitment, as many people have during these trying times, to do as we need to so that we can continue to make San Carlos a good place to live and work. We have even resigned to doing what is best for the city, even if that means taking employment with a different agency. But what we are asking for in return is for the City Council to realize that the best option for the employees and the citizens of the San Carlos is not the Redwood City proposal and Redwood City Police Department. We ask you to please keep this in mind as you move forward on your deliberations, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Suzanne? Hi. Then we have Jeff Grace and Dave Wozniak.
Good evening. Suzanne Shepard, San Carlos Police Officers Association Vice President. Sheriff Monks and Chief Covarrubias, both of you have fine, upstanding agencies with great reputations. The POA is not here to make one argument for one agency or another. With all due respect, we don't want either. I don't care about websites. I don't care about quality control. I don't care about cell phone violation citations. What I care about is the 36 men and women who have made the choice to work here in San Carlos. 25 police officers, 11 non-sworn staff who have effectively policed this jurisdiction already. Tonight you've heard that both agencies have financial difficulties. If we are to operate our city as a business, like you've suggested before, would it make financial sense to invest in a business that is facing fiscal difficulties? Everything you've heard tonight in these proposals, we already have. We already have. We already use REACT. We already use GTF. We already use NTF. The city has financial issues, no doubt. But a city is incorporated for several core purposes: public safety, sewers, etc. Not for senior centers, not for youth centers, not with parks with artificial turf. The free services have to stop in order for the city to continue. Let's get back to the basics and keep the fine agency San Carlos Police Department has been since 1925. I posed one question for the City Council, as I always do upon my speech. What are you doing to determine whether outsourcing is the correct path? Why isn't a feasibility study being done? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jeff Grace.
Mayor Royce, City Council, thank you. I'm Jeff Grace, San Carlos. During the past 10 years, I've had the opportunity to do a significant amount of work with the San Mateo Sheriff's Department through my job. And that's given me the opportunity to work with Sheriff Monks, Under Sheriff Balanas, and including when he was still with Redwood City as the police chief, as well as the former Sheriff Don Horsley, as well as a number of people here tonight I haven't seen in a while. I haven't handled the county in a while, but see a lot of the captains and lieutenants that I've done work with previously, including the dispatch supervisor. I found that the sheriff's department and the sheriff and the undersheriff have been extremely professional and knowledgeable and honest and forthright people to deal with over the last 10 years. And while I prefer to see San Carlos retain our own police department, the reality is the budget situation will not allow us to continue with our own police department. So given that we will have to look to alternatives, I'm very comfortable with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department, and I'm confident that we will receive the level of service that they have promised they would provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. David Wozniak.
Hello.
Hello.
I don't have any pre-prepared words for you tonight. My name is David Wozniak. I'm the president of the Deputy Sheriff's Association. There was very little I learned tonight as far as the sheriff's proposal. The sheriff has kept the DSA in the loop the entire time. There's literally nothing I learned that I didn't know already. Back in March, when this first came to light for the DSA, I reached out to my peers down in LA County. 25,000 deputies. They have a lot of contract beats. They've gone through this a million times. Asked them, what is some advice? Their advice was, get a seat at the table, make sure promises aren't being made that can't be fulfilled, and make sure everything is realistic. I can tell you that there are no promises being made that are not realistic and that I don't see the sheriff following through. As far as contract beats, and there was some talk about getting things addressed. I've worked in Woodside, and when there's a problem in Woodside, it gets addressed immediately. And I can tell you that from a patrol level. I don't see that as a concern. I hope you do see that a proposal offers everybody jobs. I think that's important, and I hope you take that in consideration when you finally do make this decision.
Great, thank you. Anybody else would like to speak on this? Welcome. Please, come on up. That's good. You can fill that after Gil.
Thanks. I'm Gil Granado. I'm the president of the San Carlos Police Officers Association. The city manager stated, we've made numerous overtures, but are still looking at finding a time that is acceptable to the POA in regards to meet and confer. I'm here to tell you that the San Carlos Police Officers Association is adamantly opposed to any outsourcing. However, we welcome the meet and confer process. It is not us that has delayed the meet and confer process, and actually are getting very concerned with the delaying tactics that we're getting from the city. Hopefully the city council can get involved, get the information that the POA has requested from the city staff, so that we can move forward with the meet and confer process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? You're welcome. Any other thoughts? Please come on up, sir. Yeah, thank you. You could fill out a speaker card after you speak and give it to our clerk. It'd be great. Thank you. You'd say your name and where you're from. Super.
My name is Daniel Blanchette. I'm a local San Carlos resident. And I just wanted to address the meeting because when I heard that it was being held, the topic, I think it's important as a San Carlos entity to maintain the San Carlos Police Department. There are only so many things that we can point to that make San Carlos the small town feel the place that it is. We're not Redwood City. We're not San Mateo. And one of the things I think that we can really point to that sets us apart is a local community police department that has done an excellent job. They treat the locals with respect. They are elegant, and they know the local business people. So when things need to be addressed and when there is true trouble, when there are things that happen that are a part of this town, they have a history with the town, they have a history with the business people, and they have a history with the locals. And I think that these things should be seen as highly important when we categorize and when we're looking at priorities. and that just speaking simply as a resident, I would say I really strongly believe that we should do everything we can to maintain the San Carlos Police Department. That's it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. We have time. Anybody? Okay.
Well, it's
just
a study session.
Study session, so we're fine.
Just
Okay.
adjourn.
So,
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Weiss, do you want to summarize or anything, a little bit about scheduling coming up and anything else?
well, as indicated, our intent is to evaluate. These are, as you heard tonight, some of the proposals are changing even as we speak, and we hope to evaluate, further study, and come back to the council with a further review as these proposals are finalized, with an analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of each of the proposals, as well as a comparison with our current business model, both in terms of cost as well as in the types of services that are provided. We have done an RFP to solicit someone to work with us. And we're in the process of trying to negotiate a contract for someone to work with us in that review. There have been some issues with one of the principals, some health issues that we're waiting to see how they're resolved. But it's our hope to come back to the council in June with a further report in terms of review of these proposals in a more final form, and then seek direction from the council at that time as to which direction we should move forward with. With respect to the POA, again, we've made numerous phone calls to them. We've sent correspondence. We would welcome the opportunity to meet and schedule that meeting as early as possible.
Could I introduce you two maybe at the end of the meeting?
We could sit together and talk. So we, we've made the overtures. We're trying to start that process and hope that we can move it forward in an expeditious manner. With that, I think that's the conclusion with respect to where we are in this issue. I think the city attorney was going to remind all of us that we also have public comment for items not on the agenda tonight.
Right, I understand that. I know that. Okay. Thank you very, very much. So moving on again to the last part of our agenda is public comment for any items that are not on this evening's agenda. Anybody welcome to speak? None seen. I adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Thank you very all for coming, and thank you for the presentations.